I didn't hear it, but the recording is going.
It is going, okay. Okay, good evening. I'm going to call to order our 5:30, February 26, 25 City Councilor Workshop. First up is a update from Community Development Director Scott Woodford on proposed amendments to the Public Facility Institutional Zone District.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So yeah, this is a workshop to discuss what types of amendments the Council would like to see related to the Public Facility Zone District. It's in relation to the public comment that you received at the last meeting. We've been in discussion with a entity called Treehouse Therapies, who had approached the city about a year ago, interested in potentially leasing some space at the community center, the old elementary school. And so I worked with the executive director there to kind of better understand a little bit more about what their uses are. The director was good to kind of help explain what they do, and we did a site visit over there so I could kind of better understand what the use is. But and I explained to her kind of some of the challenges that they were up against, given that the zone district isn't really set up for those kinds of uses, or hasn't been in the past, because it's public facility / institutional, so it's been more oriented towards schools, city-owned properties, parks. Many of the churches over on Trinity Way are zoned. We rezoned them to public facility institutional last year. So kind of explained how those uses really weren't contemplated with the public facility over time, because they were mostly occupied by public uses and whatnot. So we tried to look at potential ways that we could make it work, including looking at the community center definition and seeing if it fit under that. Our community center definition is currently defined as a meeting place, often a complex of buildings, where people may carry on cultural, recreational, or social activities. And so ultimately, staff felt that it was a little bit too much of a stretch to try to make that work within the existing definition. We also looked at whether it could be an accessory use to the community center, and there are some overlaps in services and functions. That didn't seem to work either. So kind of directed them to maybe approach council to see if council was interested in broadening the uses out there. Now we have a facility that is not a school, but it's still publicly zoned public facility. Are there uses in the community that would make sense to go in there, and if so, which ones, and how do we want to structure that code-wise? I guess what I'm looking for tonight is to just have a discussion in terms of what are those potential uses that the council would like to see expanded in there, kind of what are sort of the parameters and guardrails, and then we can maybe have a discussion about what's the proper tool, or what's the best tool to accomplish that. Got some ideas that I put into the staff report that it's in your packet about ways that we could potentially accommodate the therapy use. But I guess the question is, are there other things? And I was interested to hear maybe from the school as well, because I think they have additional space, and are there other things that have come through that they want to try to accommodate there, and does that fit in with what we're trying to achieve with the public facilities zone? I don't know if you want to have a little discussion about that, or do we really want to just kind of keep it focused to this particular use? And if so, then that would be probably easier, and we could move right to that.
I'm sorry, go ahead. In reading this over, I got down to the bottom where you talked about child care facilities as well. And I think if we look at making some kind of an accommodation of this nature, we should also consider the child care aspect as a part of it. It's the dearth of services within our community. And I think allowing it within the commercial area makes a lot of sense, but that also not a lot of facilities and buildings that are appropriate for child care within our commercial zone. And so I know that they have some of the SPRD staff have a background in this area, and so it may offer us some opportunities. So if we look to change this definition to include health-related, I would take out the "or" where you had it. It would be social, health-related, or childcare. That's what I would, now, I don't know if you want to try to do something with nonprofit, that gets tricky, but I definitely think that we could just make that one change to what you suggested. And by removing the "or" before health-related, putting in a comma, and then having "or" childcare at the end would solve what to me is an issue, but that's just one opinion.
Scott, I had a question.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I don't know this, but how is the childcare addressed now that's happening at the old elementary school?
So that was there is a similar use provision in our code, and through a kind of request from the applicant there to have staff analyze that request, we were able to make the finding that childcare was, or that their function was, also had school kind of educational elements to it, that it was close enough to the school use that we were able to make that finding that it was close enough.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood that before we move forward. But other than that, I'm in agreement with Councilor Ross as to how to proceed on this.
What's the impact of adding a new use to the PF zone?
So such as like childcare or
Yeah.
anything?
Anything.
I'm sorry, what's the impact?
Yeah, is it difficult to do that? Is there something we could?
No, it's just, I think it's basically, it's a code amendment. It's a development code amendment. It's just basically having that dialogue and that discussion about whether that use is appropriate. You got to think about, not only that use at this site, but you got to think about all the other zoned public facility sites and whether that use would be appropriate in those areas as well. But it's just like any other development code amendment. Does it meet the purpose of the zone district is, I guess, another test.
Can I help with that a little bit? We're creating an outright use for that zone is what we're doing, right? And we're adding to what the outright uses are. So there won't be any more, they won't have to go through any more steps if somebody at the church wanted to do a childcare facility or this health related one as well. So that's why it just needs to be thought of a little bit more, because it's not just this one use. We're actually creating that use available to all the other zones like Scott mentioned.
Yeah. And other considerations are whether it's a permitted use, which permitted is kind of a outright use, outright allowed use, that there's no other considerations. And then we have things called conditional uses, which are uses that are in concept appropriate for that zone, but may have some impacts that need to be mitigated to properly locate in those areas. And that's via land use process where they kind of, the burden of proof is on them to determine or to prove that their impacts are properly mitigated. So it gives the city a little more latitude to determine whether that use is appropriate. So that's in addition to put it in the use table. Is it, what kind of use is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we have control over that as a council to make these decisions.
When I think about adding the health related to or adjusting the definition of a community center, it just sounds like we're shoehorning it a bit into the definition. I think the most common definition of a community center doesn't necessarily include health-related activities. I had some conversation with Scott over email asking him about the Mosaic Health Services over by the high school that is in a PF zone, which is health services, similar to perhaps treehouse therapies also being a health service. So I was thinking that to kind of cover both of those, if we were to add a use code called Community Health Services, and add that here, that potentially that would cover both the Mosaic Health and the Treehouse Therapies. And then the childcare I saw is, I'm fine with adding childcare as a use as well, but I understand that they offer education as part of that childcare, so I see it falling under public-private school use that exists today. You were going to look into nonprofit. If we could say something has to be nonprofit, because I'm wondering to extend that community health services to be a nonprofit.
Yeah, 'cause we need to future out too, because, yeah, we don't, the zoning doesn't support if Deschutes County comes in here someday, hopefully with some sort of facility to have community health services, they can't really do that at the moment under this zoning, if they were in this zoning. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question, I guess, was related to nonprofits, and ran that by legal, and he didn't see any concern with that. Although nonprofit is a term that's pretty general, and it might cover some things that we may, if it's just limited to nonprofits in general, there may be nonprofits that may not be appropriate over there. And it kind of is very, very broad. So one idea is you could limit it to youth-related nonprofits or health-related nonprofits or something like that to kind of narrow it down even more. There's a suggestion about adding maybe a semi-public use. I guess the county has that in one of their zones, semi-public use, and it talks about nonprofits. So that's another option.
I'm a little concerned about trying to make this a full-fledged soup, and the reason is that we have at least one organization I'm aware of that calls itself a nonprofit, that its quote proceeds go to support foundation or something, but that's also the same group that we've had trouble with having events in the park and events across the street that involve merchandise and sales, and we've tried to deal with that. I think you have to be careful that we don't create an opening that allows someone to come in and claim, well, wait a minute, how is my nonprofit, which deals with youth, I want to set up a shop at the elementary school and sell artwork out of there or whatever we want to call it. I think that we need to be careful when we start putting the word nonprofit in, that we don't take and open up the doors to other kinds of nonprofit that we're not thinking of. So we need to think about how that wording may be, and it may be what you say. The childcare aspect, as I understand it, that is being requested would not be a educational program like SPRD offers, which is sort of, they call it preschool or whatever, they have different names for it. But this would actually be just basic childcare. It might have an enrichment component, it might not have an enrichment component. So I think I want to be sure that we allow those kinds of activities to occur in a classroom over there, if that's, and that becomes more of a day sitting activity where they do some things and things like that, and they go out and they play, but it's not an enrichment program like SPRD runs. And your problem you got with me is I lived this 13 years over at Landline, so I really see the difference and appreciate it.
Yeah.
I don't mind saying that I'd like to keep this as narrow as possible, just so we don't accidentally open up a can of worms. And, we've done this thing in the past with zoning, recently with, right out there off of Locust or Camp Oak with another, with a owner initiated. And I think that's kind of, again, what we're doing. We have a specific couple of people that are coming in, and, them and people just like them, great. Happy to crack the code a little bit, but I'm not really interested in trying to define anything else now. If the county comes in later, a couple years from now, we can do the same thing when they come in. That's kind of how I feel about it.
One thing to factor in, and I'm not sure if this gives you any comfort or not, but these entities could also self-regulate in terms of who they allow to lease to. That's another potential safeguard, but not foolproof, I guess.
Again, because we have multiple iterations of this particular zone around the city. And we make this change, it affects all the zones, not just the property across the street. So, that's where my concern arises. Certainly, I think that be very careful about who they let in the building and who they don't let in the building or what they do. But I can't speak to other folks in this zone, and nor should I.
So so far, it sounds like there's two sort of options that the council's circulating around is keeping it narrow and adding to the definition of community center that I think Councilor Ross put on the table. And then the other path would be to add the uses actually into the use table, right, as either a permitted outright or a conditional use for both childcare and health services or nonprofit health services, right? Both would be a similar process, right? Public hearing, planning commission, city council. So really it comes down to kind of how do you want to see that reflected? And one question, Scott, I guess, is the way the proposal that Treehouse made, it's a, you know, a use that falls within the community center, right? In terms of the lease is to SPRD as a community center, would they have to apply, or would that fall under their already the approved use in the site plan review that happened for the community center? If, say, the code change was to add youth health services as a permitted outright use in that zone.
So we didn't actually, review, land use review was not required by the community center.
Okay.
It didn't kick in the site plan review requirements or change of use. So if we were to expand community center definition and this fell underneath it, they could just pretty much slide right into that.
Okay.
Assuming
Is there any value in going the opposite direction? Because on your list here, it said Bend and Redmond had no definition for a community center. I mean, is there any value in just not defining it?
it kind of cuts both ways, I guess. Sometimes it's nice to have a definition to hang your hat on, but it also is sometimes nice not to have one because it does give you more flexibility. It's an option. I don't think I've ever seen a definition removed from a code. Usually they're just added.
Yeah.
So it'd be a little out of the box, but
Yeah.
nothing to say you couldn't do that.
I think our attorney might not like that option.
I was talking with him today. He's like, yeah, you could do that, I guess.
Well, I think it is a little odd that the definition does not have the word education in there. Because I know on the table, there's public and private schools, things like that, but, community centers obviously have activities that are like cooking classes and, continuing education, things like that, which I don't necessarily think fall under public or private school. But, it's very obvious to me. I think of community center, that is definitely top of the list of things I would expect at a community center. So I'm not trying to make it more complex, but that did seem to be a kind of glaring omission to me. No.
I turned it off. There it goes. It keeps going off on you.
I'm wondering if a cooking class, like you're using that example, would fall under recreational, though. We could maybe that and it doesn't have to be educational necessarily, but we could consider it recreational.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's all sorts of, classes and things that are held on different topics, so usually hasn't been an issue, but yeah, it just kind of stood out to me.
I have a question for Scott, and that is the either conditional use versus permitted use. If it was a conditional use, then any entity that went in would have to go through a review because it would be a conditional use. Is that not accurate? So I guess I don't want to make this onerous. And so I guess I'm going to defer to the rest of this group as well as to you, Scott, about whether that should be conditional use, just so we know what's happening and what's going on. But it does become more of an onerous process, and in some cases, the time it spends to get that to happen may mean that the opportunity is lost.
Yeah, and we want to kind of reserve those uses for ones that truly have impacts that are outwards to the neighborhood, like increased traffic or increased noise or things that, could be potential uh, things that bother the neighbors that if not properly mitigated could be a problem. I guess you have to consider whether this kind of use would rise to that, that it would have those kinds of impacts to the neighborhood whether it would warrant you making it a conditional use.
I just want to clarify. So Councilor Pellerin, were you suggesting that we add a new definition or two and then add those to the table?
Yeah, just adding, and I kind of like the idea of clarifying it even further, a use code that is youth health services that would cover Mosaic over by the high school and treehouse therapy.
Okay, so I think the first time around I hadn't processed that you wanted to add a definition, which I can see being helpful, and kind of clarifying what that would be.
Oh, I'm calling that a use code,
So just,
another use code to the table, another land use category.
On the table down below.
yeah, no, I understand that,
Oh,
but
okay.
like community center has, some of these have definitions. And so I wasn't sure if you were also suggesting that we should have a definition for that added to the code or just, does that make sense? That question make sense?
Yeah, is that typically what we have, a definition for every land use code?
Um, s- I think it's good practice. You
Yeah.
don't always have that, but it's helpful to
Yeah.
have a definition.
I haven't thought of one, but I only got this far.
No, that's totally fine. I just, as we talk about it, I wanted to make sure we were covering all the pieces.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should make it as simple as possible, whatever that is. And I'm willing to defer to Scott and you guys to say, hey, it's a little easier if you do this. I mean, we want to try and get more childcare in town if we can. We don't want to make it,
So childcare is a distinct category from the other ones. If you want to do that, then we'll just add childcare center, which is already a defined term in our code.
yeah.
Go ahead.
But would treehouse therapies fall under?
They wouldn't fall under
That's something
childcare.
separate, right?
That'd be
Okay.
separate.
So
yeah.
we've got two things we're talking about.
Correct.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I think we all agree we want it to be there. At least I do. So whatever it takes for us to do as a city, like Michael's pointing out, the easiest and most straightforward would probably be best.
Mhm.
I'm open to.
You guys agree that you'd mentioned, I think the community center didn't quite fit for you. Is that kind of shared by others that we might want to think about not expanding the community center definition and making a completely separate use that might accommodate that might accommodate treehouse, like such as a health-related nonprofits, or I like the semi-public use. That's kind of intriguing to me. And there's I'm trying to find the definition in the county code because I think it's potentially helpful, would address this. What do you guys think on whether we should try to expand the community center definition or come up with a completely different use for?
I think that we have a building we call a community center. We have other facilities that are listed below that have other names and definitions. So that are allowed in the PF zone. So yeah, you could have it as a new definition. I think it's kind of getting muddy at some point. I mean, for instance, youth health services, good term. I like that. What if somebody wants to come in and work with Alzheimer's folks at the community center with some memory care issues, maybe once or twice a day, that kind of a thing, sort of the drop-in like they're doing with the youth program. If we put youth in, do we eliminate that possibility? I don't know.
Is there a simple way to do this with the community center and just allow anything that's allowed in the PF zone is allowed within the community center itself? I'm not a planner, but is that a simple? Yeah, Just kind of I just want to make it easy. Easy for us, easy for the city, easy for citizens to understand, and easy for businesses.
Say that again.
Just basically, the community center can have components in it that are any use, any other uses that are within the PF zone, and just say, yeah, you can bring in a childcare, you can bring in a healthcare component. I don't think we should put an age on it, to be honest with you. I'd like to encourage a little bit of any age healthcare. Urgent care, hello, come on in. We have a community center that'd love to be co-located with you possibly, or, you know what I mean? Just my thought.
So there currently isn't a land use code for, I just lost my train of thought, for the medical, what you were just talking about, right? Okay. So when you were saying community center or any other land use that qualifies under PF zone,
Right.
we don't have anything for.
Yeah, I think we should add it in the
Oh, okay.
PF zone.
Okay, okay.
And then just on the community center part, they can have any component that's allowed in the PF zone. So it's really clear that they can kind of like, it's already on their property. They own the property is already fine. They don't have to change anything on the property. They can just bring in that component because their property has already been vetted.
Yeah, we just have to think through that if it's already a, you know, a permitted use in general, then that could open up a can of worms. I mean, I kind of like the qualifier of like nonprofit or, you know, what the county was using, just to, you know, because you know, a for-profit medical provider could then take advantage of that, and that's not necessarily, you know, we have a commercial area and we have all these other places for that kind of business, so.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, yeah, we don't accidentally open it up. But I think adding daycare is important because it's not listed anywhere, and public facility, and I mean, I know that, you know, the churches have run daycares for years, and you know, it's
okay as an accessory use to a primary use. That's probably how they did the childcare.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if
it's not
like,
listed.
if its own
but
business, then that's different. Like if it's separate.
accessory use.
Yeah.
But that might be nice just to acknowledge it. Because it is that gray area, it's not quite education, it's not like quite the school, but
Well, it says that in their development code, as Scott mentioned, childcare is defined as childcare centers, and that's allowed in other zone districts. So I would just like to add that to the table rather than adding that to community center. I think that's for the childcare piece. I think that's cleaner.
even if it's, well, it says public or private schools, so I guess that's pretty much the same thing.
So I'm gonna throw the wrench in the monkey works for 1/2 second and say, what happens if someone comes in and wants to do an adult daycare? Which is it's a thing that's happening all over the nation. I'm just,
I
do we revisit it then, or do we, yeah, do we say daycare or childcare or something like that? I don't know. But I know we want the childcare, don't get me wrong.
Different use
Okay.
category. We have a residential care facility, which sounds like that would be more that
This
where
would be drop-in for the day, so people who have an elderly parent who can't be left alone, they have to work. So they're the care provider, and so they pay someone to come in and watch that parent while they're gone, don't want them to start the stove or something like that. So there are adult drop-in daycare centers popping up all over the nation to accommodate those families that are taking care of an elderly parent. But they also have to work.
So I absolutely agree with you, Councilor Ross, about it's kind of like a new societal need, but I think we might want to put that off to a different project and maybe look at the definition longer term, not in the next month or anything, our definition of child care center, and see if it makes sense to turn that into care, like day care center or something like that. But for tonight, I'm hesitant to get into going too far down that road.
was just going to add, cities that have, or recreation departments or districts that have senior centers, that's often an activity or a service that's offered as part of a senior center, which I think probably falls within the community center definition for social activities or something like that with respite care for people to drop off and things. So, I mean, that might be captured just by the nature of having the community center definition already in there.
Just didn't want to narrow this classroom.
Yeah, there's just, yeah, I think we all want this to be as simple as possible, but I think we all respect the fact that this is still going to be a time-consuming process, and maybe we should get a little bit more bang for our buck out of it if we're going to have to, go through the whole process of public noticing and things like that. So just trying to find the sweet spot in there, if there is one.
Remind me what our, kind of rolling back just to the one case that we're looking at this specifically for. We had a time frame of June maybe that we're targeting, which puts us a little bit in a time crunch, only meaning that if we can't give good enough direction in this meeting, it feels like maybe we're not going to be able to accomplish this in the time frame that we would need to in order to help this much needed service start. Normally, I would rather wrestle the whole thing, but I also don't want to hold up the care that I think is much needed in our community.
Scott, does changing that definition require that we take it to the planning commission and that it go through a hearing?
Yeah, it does.
Does making a change to the table of use require that it go to the planning commission and have a hearing?
Yeah, any change to the
Okay,
development code.
just wanted to be sure that we're talking the same amount either way.
Good question.
So theoretically, we could say, punt on it, let them get in and then change it later. I mean, because they would get into under the community center. Is that correct?
Well, that's the problem. We try to get them under the community center, current community center definition.
Okay.
That's why we're here.
All right.
So we
So-
started with just broadening the definition of community center. The other option on the table is just adding semi-public youth health services to a permitted use in the PFI zone. And then I think we have agreement to add childcare center to the PFI zone too.
And we can go work this with the planning commission a little bit and have them work it through, kind of give them the direction that you guys have given us tonight, but have them chew on it a little bit and then come back to you later. Or would you rather see another workshop?
Oh,
So we were talking about this in our goals last week, and I just want to put it out there. I mean, every time we have to bring it back to a workshop, it's more work for the staff. And I think it would behoove us to, go ahead and, spend 10 minutes now that could save hours later and try to give the best direction we can.
yeah, I'm all for 'em. If we're going to do the childcare, let's add that part, youth health center, whatever, to the zone, if that's the fastest way. That's what
Yeah.
I need help from you or we need help from
I
you.
guess the question I have is, do you want to augment the community center definition? Seem like a community center kind of use or not? Or do we need a separate to address it?
I mean, I think I wouldn't mind if it was able to do it anywhere in the zone, to be honest with you, as long as it still has the guardrails that everything else has to be in the zone.
Because how does Mosaic fit into the zone?
Well, Mosaic was, I went back and read the decision from like 2012, and it was, there's a use category in the PF zone called public building, I think is what it's called.
Because the county owns it?
Which is kind of an interesting,
Yeah.
it's not a use, it's an
Yeah.
ownership style. But that's what they used, that's what they used
Public
to,
yards myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to public feet.
that's what they used to justify it back then. Because it was owned by Deschutes County. that was enough to qualify it.
That means the grass part of it is public park.
Yes.
And so,
So I guess where I am listening to this discussion and is, I think, first of all, I'll tell you point blank, I'm ready to approve both of those types of changes. How the best way to do them, I don't know. I would then say to you that if we've got to go into this table and tweak it, look at the entire table and be sure there's anything else that needs to be tweaked, so we only do this once. And I have no idea what those other tweaks might or might not be. But, you mentioned public buildings and structures. What is that? Some of this code comes from somebody else's code that comes from somebody else's code. It all kind of gets put together. And, my favorite one is the accessory uses the structure to a primary use allowed if they comply with the development standards and any reference special use standards. What does that mean? Anyway, so, so where I am today is I'm ready to approve this, but I'm also very comfortable with kicking the can down the road a little bit and having it get worked through the process that it needs to go through. But I do not want to delay that June opening date for this program, because I've worked with behavioral disorder youth, with the youth that they're targeting, and the sooner you work with these children, the less of a problem you're going to have when they get to be middle school age, because I dealt with them there, and I'm 100% behind what they're doing, and I do not want to slow them down.
what are the two ways again, please?
Modifying the definition of community center, adding something along the lines of youth health services into that definition, or having that separate as a use, a category within the use table for the public facility institutional district.
Okay, I'm just at the point, yeah.
To Councilor Pellerin's point, it would capture things like mosaic if you had it as a separate use category.
Right.
PFI zone, and say if another therapy services or something wanted to come into the PFI zone somewhere else within town.
Yeah, and that's where I am. I think if it's good enough for the community center to be able to change their definition, I'm fine allowing it in the zone. That's kind of how I feel. I don't want, because what'll happen is a church might find some kind of mental health care that they want to add to their church and have a use in their church, and they'd have to come back one more time because we didn't put it in the whole zone. And I think that's where I'm at. So I think that if, I feel like it's good for the community center, it's probably good for any PF facility in our town. And I think it's just easier that way for future use. They still have to go through the same process, land use process, right? So that's how I feel about it. Got to get head nods.
I'm good with either way, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, as long as that sits well with you, it will help current and future users.
I also think keeping that definition of community center clean and then going down and putting it in the PF zone probably makes the most sense. Because it could be housed in the community center, it could be housed in a building next to the community center, it could be housed across from us. And so to me, that speaks to putting it into the use table to provide the maximum amount of flexibility to that service provider when they come into our community.
I'm hearing add an additional use to cover that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
As opposed to modifying the definition of community center
And
to cover mosaic, if kind of legitimate, because it doesn't help them if we change the community center definition because they're not a community center.
Right.
Okay.
And
Sounds
do
good.
we want to also add childcare in here as well?
Those two
Okay.
things, I think.
Yeah.
are the things I was thinking.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Workshopped.
All right.
Works.
Thank you. That was
We
worked. Yeah. It's okay. It's kind of a big deal, and I think it was very thoughtful, so. Next up, we have City Manager Jordan Wheeler and Republic Services staff.
Does it come up? I'll start doing the introductions.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I will likely take more than 20, just to set expectations. So
Okay.
the purpose of the workshop tonight with Republic, we have Republic Services here to give an update. But as you recall, there's support to study and develop a plan for the future of the recycling center. And within that goal, we have to take into account a new state law passed in 2021 called the Recycling Modernization Act. So over the last several months, we've been meeting with Republic, DEQ, representatives from the Circular Action Alliance and the county about different options that we have before us with the recycling center. Just I'll let Republic take control of the presentation, but just kind of set the stage and maybe the foundational points for the workshop tonight. There's a couple things to keep in mind. One, we have a recycling center. It's popular. The tonnages and stuff are in the materials in the presentation. It takes commingled recycling, cardboard, glass, motor oil. All those except for glass are materials that can be collected at curbside currently by residents of Sisters. The only thing that is not collected is glass. Motor oil is not on special. Okay, so not oil.
So we do commingle curbside.
Right.
We offer commercial
Cardboard. The annual cost for keeping the recycling center open, operational, and serviced is $108,000 roughly per year. It's collected, I think, every other day, and then somebody comes every day to check in on it and make sure it's clean and that sort of thing. The county does provide a contribution towards that in the amount of $40,000 per year. In conversations with the county, they're not interested in taking it over as a county service or as buying the property or anything like that to keep the recycling center. They have Fryer as a transfer station. And one of the things that the RMA is doing is establishing new depots or these recycling centers that have additional materials that can be collected and recycled now because these producers of materials like styrofoam and other plastics are now paying a fee that is being collected to basically create these depots and creating an opportunity to recycle these hard to recycle materials. And then another point to kind of keep in mind in this is that even though the county is providing funding towards the recycling center, it's a mix of Sisters residents and then unincorporated residents that use the recycling center, right? A lot of folks that live in the unincorporated areas around us don't have the same type of curbside services. And so they use the recycling center as a place to bring their commingled recycling, cardboard and glass. So one of the options that we've been working on with Republic is looking at going to curbside glass as a service here on a monthly basis, and they'll go into the details on that. And so if you're exploring the option, the reason I bring this up is if you're exploring the option of keeping the recycling center open or want us to further study converting the recycling center to a depot with perhaps some funding from the RMA, there's still probably a subsidy that's going to be happening from City of Sisters ratepayers or the city general fund that would be subsidizing the county, even though they're providing $40,000. It's probably being more used by unincorporated residents, especially if you count for all the curbside services that we get that they don't. And so with that, let me turn it over to you guys. Oh no, you guys have the slideshow, and we want to get into a discussion here. But again, the purpose, we're not making any decisions on the recycling center tonight. It's really to kind of present these options and get some direction on additional information or further study that we need to do to kind of get to a pointed decision.
Well, thank you, Jordan. We
Yeah.
appreciate that. I think you took all of our talking points, but we're here to provide an update. And within the packet, we have some information. Oh, is it on?
Bring it close.
Oh, I apologize. Okay. So we have some information in here. We think the primary focus should be on the Sisters Recycling Center, but we did include 2024 service data along with call center data and some focuses that we're going to have to ensure that we're providing good and consistent service to the community. So if
Can you
any-
both introduce yourselves and your titles?
Yes.
All right.
I'm Erica Heitzma. I'm the general manager for Republic Services, and I'm with Courtney Voss, who is our municipal manager for the Central Oregon Republic Services area.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, so going into the focus on the Sisters Recycling Center. So just to give a high level overview, Jordan went into quite a bit of detail of it, but this is a city-owned facility, and we do operate the facility, and we've done so since we took over the franchise in about 2020 timeframe. We provide cardboard, commingle, glass, and we also pick up motor oil for any of those materials that are dropped off at the Sisters Recycling Center. We included our 2023 and 2024 volume data. It's relatively the same, not a lot of year-over-year change. But as you can see with cardboard in 2024, we picked up 113 tons. Commingle was about 161 tons, and glass was 95 tons or 96 tons. On a weekly basis, we pick up cardboard and commingle 3 times a week, and the glass bin we usually service on average once a month. And like Jordan said, we have one individual that goes there 7 days a week to ensure the property is clean and orderly, and to try and also eliminate any contamination that we may experience at the Sisters Recycling Center. So that's the high-level overview. Any questions before we go into what we feel like could be potential options with the Sisters Recycling Center?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So, you said you have someone going in 7 days a week, and that person's also looking at contamination. Are those the numbers you have up there? Are those total, or do you have to? Are there some, like, sometimes you just have to dump the whole thing because it's just such a mess? You know, like
Oh,
you've
as
got a
far as
big.
if the box is contaminated, that we have to dump it as trash?
Yeah.
No, we haven't had any of that happen. We do also have a trash container because we do experience contamination.
Sure.
So that attendant will pull out any contamination that he does see and put it in the trash bin. And the trash container, we provide service there 3 days a week.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
You're welcome.
How often did you say an attendant goes there?
He is there once a day, 7 days a week for about an hour.
Thank you.
So you collected 113 tons of cardboard. I had to do my math again because I did the wrong one. And, you know, we talk about it, the cost to you is 69,000 or roughly 68,000 in the documentation.
Right.
Yet, Oregon Corrugated Cardboard Recycling, which does work out of Bend, and I don't know if that's who you partner with or not, and your cardboard is paying 22 to 47 cents a pound for a corrugated cardboard collection. And so if we take the lower number, you're still bringing in about 40-some thousand dollars to offset, 49,000 to offset some of that $69,000 cost. And so in documentations you give to me in the future, I'd like to see the net and not the gross.
Sure.
Because it gives me a better number to work from as I'm looking at the impact to our community as we make decisions like this. I understand the 66,000. I don't doubt that. I think that's probably pretty accurate, even with Ben. But you know, there is. I'm not going to look at what you get for glass because basically you're giving it away. I'm not going to look at the commingled as tough, but cardboard is actually a sellable product. And I suspect that you probably get more than 22 cents a pound for it because your cardboard is baled and ready to go and you have a lot of it, and they do give a volume discount, or volume, not discount, I guess, incentive. So I just want you to be aware that that 68,000 number to me is not valid. It's much less than that because of what you make off the cardboard sales.
Okay.
With that in mind, that doesn't change this discussion. But I think it does change to me the savings of the discussion. So I want to be clear there.
So, and that's a great takeaway, and we can have that as an item that we come back to council. We are actually working through our 2024 financial results, so that can be something that we create a P&L or have that information available so that we can present that to council and provide all of those details.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, that's actually it.
There it is. You're on.
You're on.
It's actually a nice segue. So again, my name's Courtney Voss. I'm the municipal manager for Republic Services. I started this job in September of 2022, and the third meeting I had in my role was actually with Paul. Hey, and it was about the Sisters Recycling Center. So that was in October of 2022. We have been talking about this since, and part of the reason that it was hard for us to make decisions or make a recommendation to council was because in the background, the state was modernizing the recycling system. And I think you're probably pretty aware of what that is. I do want to point out we have our DEQ representative, Colin, is here. DEQ is responsible for a lot of the rulemaking and work associated with that legislation, most of which starts to go into effect on July 1st of this year. And Nick, I don't know if Nick is on the line or not. He is from CAA, which is the Circular Action Alliance, and they are responsible for the real implementation work and management of the resources that are coming in as a result of RMA. The reason I want to point that out is because one of the things that has come up is an interest in figuring out whether or not we can utilize some of those RMA resources to either reduce the impact of a curbside glass program or subsidize or support the operation of the Sisters Recycling Center, and trying to figure out what all of that looks like. So that kind of brings us up to why it's taken us so long to really understand that. CAA just got their program plan approved last week on Friday, so a lot of this is still kind of new. I want to talk a little bit about the options. So one of the things that we proposed, because Sisters residents have all of the commodities at the curb currently except for glass, we did a pro forma. We did the work to figure out what it would cost us to offer that service once a month in an 18-gallon tote box to residents. We came up with a rate of $4 per month. There's a slide, I think it's slide 7, 8, 9, somewhere in here, that details what that proposal includes and kind of how it would work. So that is one of the options we were evaluating. To Jordan's point, we don't exactly know who's utilizing the recycling center, but I think it is fair to assume that the bulk of those users are county or commercial businesses. Then the question is, do customers want the convenience of being able to give us their glass at the curb as opposed to having to drive it somewhere? There are some other benefits. When we pick up things at the curb, we have higher participation rates. We divert more from the landfill. People are generally better at doing things when it's easy and in their community or at their door. So that is kind of one of the options that we brought to the table. There isn't going to be a substantial RMA subsidy or benefit associated with a curbside program. So we wanted to put that out there. The $4 rate is pretty much as good as we can get it to be. And I'm sure that either Colin or Nick could speak to that more if you had questions about why the curbside program is not subsidized.
I have a couple of questions about, first of all, I'm not interested in anything that would put more stuff in the waste stream. So the solution of eliminating the recycling center and not doing anything is not going to happen, at least in my mind, because I don't want to see us go backwards. I use the glass recycling significantly there, and I use the large format cardboard recycling. And I noticed many times when I go, a lot of what I'm seeing in there are television boxes, computer boxes. So I think it is getting used by local residents when the cardboard they have does not fit, even if they cut it into little small itty bitty pieces in the recycling bin. So we need to think about how we're going to handle large cardboard. But when it comes to the glass curbside, I had this in the Valley. I liked it, but it was twice a month, not once. And I can tell you that I would in the 2 18-gallon containers for a monthly service, or I would be throwing stuff in the trash. So one option is you don't charge extra for the extra tote, and they just dump 2 because they're coming to the site, and I'm assuming they're being hand dumped as opposed to machine dump, because that's the only way I've ever seen it done. So the time it takes to dump 2 totes versus 1 it's a little bit, and if everybody had 2, it would be a lot. But I think that if you could figure out a way that a customer can be sure that they can handle in a month the amount of glass. I mean, I put it into used, I go to the liquor store and get boxes of all my glass, and those are big boxes, little boxes. And we take about once a month, we take 6 boxes, 12-pack boxes, and get rid of glass. Sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 8, because we recycle every bit of glass that comes in the house. So I want to be sure. I know we may be different than some folks who are used to doing in the valleys, who get used to doing glass. And I'm fine with curbside pickup. In fact, I'd love it. But I would like either to see 2 totes or twice a month on the day that you have your recycling picked up. There's 2 ways to do it in my mind. And once it's twice a month, which was what I had in the valley, or 2 totes if you need it at no extra charge.
So maybe one of the takeaways will be that we'll come back with another rate option for,
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know if you have data on this, but other communities. And Redmond, other communities that have curbside glass, twice a month. Volumes you see, what kind of participation? I don't know if you keep track of that. I've had similar experiences too.
Once a month is
And
too long.
Oh, I was going to say it's the opposite for me, right? I'm just curious of other people's experiences and what the data might show of like how often people actually need to recycle glass or would drag out the 18 gallon bin for glass. Your pickle jars, there's less beer bottles these days,
Well, and another thing is that there's more, the bottle bill now accepts more items than it did just a few years ago. So I think there's probably a level of diversion going to bottle drop than what used to be. I mean, that's something maybe you can answer if you've seen numbers in other communities drops, since the bottle bill shifted a couple years ago. And then just another thing to keep in mind is that, having lived in communities with glass as well, and it's that catch-22 of do we want it twice a month or once a month because it's loud and we'll hear about it. And we always knew which guy was picking up that week, and if he was going through a divorce or not, how
Much noise he made.
how much noise he made. We got to know who was that week based on the level of noise. So not a horrible thing, but just something that we'll have to adjust to in a quiet community.
I guess, and I think you talked later, Jeff. I think what I'm saying is that I don't want to be penalized because I can't throw my glass into the big dumpster. I don't mind paying the $4 a month fee or even $5 a month fee, but I think in my household anyway, we try not to buy anything in plastic. It's hard to do, but we try not to do it because of the microplastics and everything else. And so we're probably odd to unusual on that account. But I also think you're going to see more and more producers getting away from the plastic and going back to glass or other alternatives that might be recyclable. Yeah, and I do have bags and bags of returnables in the garage too, so
So
I'm not good at it.
we can probably get some comparison data from Bend. Every community is a little bit different, and even within Bend, different areas produce more glass than others, but maybe we can put together an analysis.
That would be helpful. I mean, for me, it's just that I don't want us to go backwards. And yet I also understand the inadequacies of the current facility. I've gone in there and picked garbage out of the cardboard bin. I picked garbage out of the commingle bin and thrown it away because I could see it.
Yeah.
And I've seen bags of garbage go in that clearly is someone who's using that as the dump.
Mhm.
And they're probably not a resident.
I think that's another point that we haven't made yet is, and I noticed today because of the windy days this week, there's stuff against the fence and everything. So, but the improvement that leads to the question of keeping the recycling center is going to need some improvements, and just help with the maintenance and operations of it with security, safety improvements, things like that. That's regardless of whether it would become a pro depot or not. There'd be some level of investment. And I don't know if you guys have those numbers yet of what that might take, but it's in our interest too, because just having more oversight and safety on that property would be a good thing for us.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have that information yet, but if council was interested in us evaluating what the facility would need to get some safety standards or things improved from a safety perspective, we can certainly do that. Things like, the guardrails need to be fixed, looking at security cameras as a potential option, things like that we can implement that would improve the safety of the facility. So that's something like that.
I'd like to throw in my 2 cents. I'm really big on option 1. I think it's an underutilized facility. I think we have 5 things, 10 things we could figure out to do with that land. I think that the city is subsidized events just here in town to get the whole community, whether they're in town or not, to be able to get some of that special stuff. But I just want to put it in my other counselors, my fellow counselors' minds that I think we have to think big picture the whole time we're talking about this, not just now and not just the next time we talk about it. For the next 5 or 10 years, if we continue to keep it as it is, that doesn't mean we still shouldn't be thinking about what we might be able to use it for next, right? So I think that that's definitely a big thing and that's mostly on our plate, not on yours, and I'm not trying to put it on you. I just would like to, Peter Hoover's here out in the audience, and he would love to have some land for some more affordable housing. So, but not just him, there's other things too. There's, we have parking and other issues that we might be able to use that land for. So just keep that in mind. I'm not trying to sway anybody's mind. I'm not trying to derail the conversation at all. I just want to keep that on everybody's plate.
I think that's a good comment. And I'm a little bit, I want to back up because Gary, you were asking some questions earlier about, being able to sell cardboard, et cetera. But right now we're looking at a $68,000 cost per year to keep it open. And so are we looking at changing that number to be able to keep it open? Because I think that the amount that it would cost us is probably going to weigh into the decision.
The amount of cardboard they pulled out at the cheapest rate is $49,000, so you would subtract that from the 68. Because that's a realized, that's the cash value of the cardboard they collect that sell, and that's coming from this facility. So I'm not trying to pick on anybody or anything, but that's why when I said that the number is, yeah, that's what it's costing them to do it, but they're recouping a significant portion of that through the sale of cardboard. You don't get it from glass. I don't think you get much from commingled, but and OCCS actually provides the transportation of the cardboard once it's baled and loaded on their truck at no charge because they're selling it to the mills at a much higher rate.
Would
So
you guys
it
come back
looks
to the
like-
financials
I have-
on
yeah.
just the recycling
Yeah.
center and stuff?
So that's.
It-
I
we need to have a
think
comment from
that
Nick.
number's not accurate.
Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to interject real quick. I think this conversation is going in an awesome direction. I really like the emphasis on not taking any steps back. But real quick, I just want to make sure we're using correct data for all this. That cardboard number is I believe very, very high for what the actual price of cardboard is. Freight on board, delivered to a mill. It's more in the range of $75 a ton right now in the open market, and that's closer to 3.5 cents a pound. So I think for just that part of the equation, we just need to make sure we're using some more accurate numbers.
I use the OCCS website for the price.
Okay. I think, yeah, Republic would know better what they're getting for it and what mill is buying it for what, but just what we see generally for OCC is more closer to $75 a ton right now.
Yeah, I think it'll be beneficial for us to create that P&L to be able to show you the number. Because there is some cost associated with transporting the material to the mills, which are located in Portland. So that cost is taken into consideration. So like I said, I think it'll be very helpful for us to be able to detail out what our true expenses are compared to the revenue that we have and really what the delta is. This number right here that we represented, that $68,000, is the delta between what our expenses are versus the $40,000 subsidy that we get from the county. But again, I think a breakout would be really helpful to illustrate what we're seeing so you can see the same thing.
Well, and I'm just saying that this kind of goes back to some discussions we've had in previous years. I just want to be sure the numbers that are put in front of us, especially when it's a debit number, are accurate.
Right.
And reflect the true cost, because that's what I'm here representing this community for. And I have no problem with option one if we can figure out how to allow heavy glass users like me, and I'm not the only one, but, and every time I'm over there throwing glass in that bin, there's someone else over there throwing glass in the bin as well. They may be from the county, but they're probably local. Sometimes they have a pickup, sometimes they're probably a business, like you can tell by what they got. But I really like curbside glass. So I haven't got a problem with that. I'm just kind of the frequency is what concerns me.
Okay.
In the greater scheme of things, I like that we do have this recycling depot, and I know that the majority of people using it do not live in the city. There's no data for that. There's no cameras or you know, we're not reading license plates or anything. So we don't know that, but just knowing human nature, I don't like that we are heavily subsidizing that, as a city. However, logically and in the bigger picture, if we are getting more people to recycle and we're providing a location that's very convenient for people, Fry Rear is not convenient for the majority of people in this corner of the county. But our city is, and if they come into the city and then go hit some other businesses and spend some other money, that's not a bad thing either. But I am uncomfortable with how much that we as a city are subsidizing it. So I don't necessarily have a issue with it continuing in some form, and I would love to see it. We start collecting other things. I mean, we have, hazmat events are carbon. That's not good for our community, anybody else's community either. So, I think, but yeah, I mean, I definitely see that it's also a property that could have other uses in the future. So I don't think this is something we need to be deciding. This is its life for the next 20 years. Certainly keeping, your comments in mind for sure. But yeah, I don't like kind of subsidizing the rest of our county neighbors in this process, but I don't mind providing a service. I mean, we are the city that supports 10 to 15,000 people in the Greater Sisters Country area. And that's just, we have the schools here, we have the services here. We understand that we're supporting other people. That's okay. It's just the fair share thing, the issue.
You think, so I'm still kind of learning about what's coming in July. So do you think that the current depot has room to be a PRO?
That's a
Depot
really,
also?
that's a really good question and something that Erica and the operations team are evaluating. CAA has a recommended template for how those pro depots are set up. They're not opposed to having conversations, and I shouldn't speak for Nick. Nick, you're on the phone, you can do it yourself, but I don't think they're opposed in any way to taking a different approach if the site requires it. That said, it'll be tight. I think no matter what we do, there will have to be a lot of conversations about how to make it work and how to make it work safely and in a way that we can get trucks in and out. So that is a consideration. And actually, kind of, since we're talking about option 2, I don't know, Erica, if you want to add anything to the conversation about keeping that depot and adding it making it a pro depot. So the way that process would work is that, CAA would need to be on board. And Nick, I don't know if you want to speak to the types of materials that we would be accepting there as a pro depot and what your kind of expectations, requirements, or resources that might come with that. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Sure. No, absolutely. And I apologize. I forgot to introduce myself when I first chatted in. I'm Nick Esbister. I'm a contractor and consultant that is supporting CAA's depot outreach here. We would probably, there's probably not enough time in a venue like this. The Pro Depot is its own slide deck. That is another 20 slides to kind of explain the new system. But for our purposes of tonight, it is taking difficult to recycle materials that shouldn't be collected in the blue bin at the curb. And it's giving that a drop-off option because almost everything is recyclable, but its recyclability at the curb is very difficult in many situations. And so that's why the Recycling Modernization Act is pointing these materials such as shredded paper, plastic lids, plastic film, and as glass as well is being moved to these types of outlets to be a separate collection model. Now, the program will compensate collection sites for being a location for collecting materials, similar to how the Oregon E-Cycles program works. That program compensates for poundage sites that collect TVs, mice, computers, et cetera, at places like Goodwill, for example. This program it also has similar mechanisms for a revenue stream. That being said, we would not meet that delta of the $69,000 would not be covered by what maybe additional revenue this could bring in, as the revenue and potential site upgrades or anything like that would only be eligible for the addition of these materials. Part of that is staff time, so that might help offset the staff time a little bit. If he's on site checking one thing, he could probably check the other. Rooms, saving some space. We could maybe take the glass dumpster away and then have the Pro Depot handle that material. That could be, more space, less cost example. But again, I apologize, but the whole Pro Depot model is definitely its own beast of a presentation, but that's how I think it could maybe potentially help offset some of the costs the city is seeing.
Yeah, thank you for that. The reason I was asking the question is also kind of like about human path. So, if we're going to have, I'm just going to use, shrink wrap plastic, just use that as the one example. I mean, if we're going to have it at our depot here in Sisters, or we close down the depot and people are all going to have to go out to Fry Rear, that it's just two different ways of, I just want to understand in each of the options, where people are going with what products and be able to have that type of visual. And that's why I was curious as to whether or not the depot we have now would be able to handle that, size wise.
I think with this, I mean, there's potential. We would have to further evaluate with CAA, and they would have to be in agreement that this is a facility that can handle pro material. And then we would have to evaluate if we want to continue, or the city wants to continue to also have the material that we're collecting now, which again is commingled glass and cardboard, along with the motor oil as well. So all of that I think would still need some evaluation, and we would have to come back to the city and present those. Present that at least in more detail, if that's an option we want to exercise.
A couple of questions, thinking about, like I said, I hate to go backwards. I'm with where Michael is, by the way. Just so you know, I think that the facility probably is inadequate and we need to look at other options. I am concerned. I guess one question I have, has anyone looked at a curbside recycling program for those folks that get garbage service from you out in the county? So say what we call Sisters Country.
Yeah, so as part of the recycling modernization, that section of Deschutes County and all sections of Deschutes County are on the list for service expansion. So they will soon, I think before the end of 2027, have curbside recycling.
Because my concern would be, if indeed we're right, and I know we're subsidizing, and I understand all that, that's an awful lot of material that goes in there. And if we take away the bins, that material is going to go somewhere. And I guarantee you a lot of those folks aren't going to drive to Fry here. So they're going to end up in the waste stream, going to end up in the backyard being burned, which creates its own set of issues for us with stuff flying through the air. We don't want flying through the air. Or they're going to be discarded roadside. And so I am concerned about that. And this is not your problem. This is just my brain dump here. And so I would want to see if we eliminate that recycle station and the services it provides. If there needs to be an interim, the interim might be a couple of those cardboard containers set up somewhere that have the little small slits and you can only get flattened cardboard into rather than over the top. And I've seen those around, they're fairly effective. And maybe even a glass container for those folks that has just the little windows that the glass goes in. But I'm a little concerned as a person, as an individual, not as a city councilor, but about the waste stream interruption that will happen when that facility goes away if we don't have curbside pickup in what we call Sisters Country. Because those, even though we say it's not Sisters residents, they're people who frankly view themselves as Sisters residents.
I want to ask a hard question. You don't have to answer it right now, but maybe when you come next time. I'd really like to know and verify how much of the recyclable material that we actually pick up actually gets recycled. And because I know that there's been organizations in other areas of the world and the country that don't recycle as much as they pick up. Do you guys keep information on that? Love to see it. Doesn't have to be tonight, but just next.
Right, and we will have that as a takeaway, but we can confidently say that all the material that we pick up that is recyclable material does get recycled.
Cool. It's good to hear. Be nice to see the numbers though. Just
At least goes to a recycling facility, a MRF or something, and then it's on its own.
some of those contractors are not you guys, right? So they're,
It goes
We-
into a semi-trailer and goes to Indonesia.
and I think it's happening more than we know, but not as much as some conspiracy type people think. So
And there's transparency around that, and we have transparency in that process already in that data, so we can provide that and
Good.
show you where that goes. Sure.
I wonder the same thing.
Yeah, and then I don't want to belabor this, but also, if there's any way that the quality of the recycling materials you get at a depot where somebody is checking on it versus the quality that's coming out of commingle on the street. Is one better than the other? Or is it better really to have, because I've worked in recycling and waste management a lot, and sometimes it's better to have somebody sitting there watching the whole thing versus letting people having to figure it out on their own. I know part of the RMA is to try to help with the process and standardize everything and make it easy for people. But if you have that information, that'd be great. If you don't, I would understand that. But yeah, I don't know. So,
Messaging worked, yay.
okay, we've run significantly over time, but it was worth it because this is a really important topic for us in the community. So, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we?
No, I think we
meeting?
have a lot of takeaways, so we'll regroup tomorrow and then connect with Jordan and figure out the timeline for getting that information back to you.
I know it goes against the multiple workshops idea, but this was sort of the introduction to the
Oh.
things that we've been looking at and trying to get more information and what data you need to kind of drive out a decision here.
When appropriate. It was more that if we can take 10 extra minutes instead of several hours, that's, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. End this workshop. And we will convene the regular city council meeting at 6:55, so in 7 minutes. Ready? There she is. I'd like to call to order the February 26, 2025 regular meeting of the city council. Our 6:30 meeting, running a little late tonight. Thank you for your patience. And if you would like, join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Letz,
Here.
Council President McDougall,
Here.
Councilor Preedin,
I'm mostly here.
Councilor Ross,
Yes.
Councilor Pellerin.
Here. Okay, thank you. Do I have an approval of the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second?
Okay, I'm an approval and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, first up tonight, we have a couple presentations before we get to visitor communication. So if you are here for visitor communication, you can sign up over on that table and it'll just be a little while longer. I always look forward to hearing from you. First up is Scott Humpert with Explorer Sisters and the annual update. Yeah, whatever's easiest for you, if it's just you. Not just you.
Just got you.
We're happy to see you. And just to fill out some dead air, the City of Sisters contracts with Explore Sisters for destination management services. The annual report outlines the progress of Explorer Sisters through August 2024.
There it is.
All right.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Thanks for having us tonight. For the record, my name is Scott Humphrey. I'm the Executive Director of Explore Sisters. As you mentioned, we are the destination management organization and feel very honored and privileged to be so for the Greater Sisters area. Tonight, I'm here to provide our annual update on our progress over the last year and give you kind of a sneak peek into where we're headed into 25 and 26. Submitted the report last week with our annual report and our business plan, so this will be kind of a mashup of those two documents, and then happy to answer any questions at the end. So I'm just going to jump in and get started. Just a couple refreshers to set the table about our vision, mission, and values. You know, really our vision comes down to a thriving community balanced against local livability. Our mission is to guide intentional stewardship of the unique character of the Greater Sisters area through to enhance economic, social, and environmental vitality. And our values center around transparency, quality, collaboration, innovation, and agility. I'm not going to read through every word on these slides, but we currently have a 7-member voting board of directors and 2 city staff liaisons, one appointed by the council and the other appointed by city staff. At the end of 24, we had 2 of our founding board members complete their term and roll off the board of directors. That was Krista Monroe from Sisters Folk Festival and Casey Might from Blazing Saddles. But in January, we welcomed 2 new members. We welcomed Dawn Boyd of the Sisters Outdoor Quilt Show and Chris Rogers, the general manager of Grand Stay Hotel on the west side of town. Currently, we have 1 staff member. You're looking at all of them right here in front of you. And just one last refresher on our roles and responsibilities of Explore Sisters as the DMO. Economic development, which really lends itself to the financial impacts that tourism has on the community. Brand stewardship is that marketing and reputation management piece. Destination management goes back to the livability in the community. Insights and impacts really inform our decision making and provide indicators of our performance and allow us to be advocates of the value of tourism here in the surrounding area in Central Oregon. We have 4 strategic objectives: destination marketing, stakeholder and community engagement, data and research, and sustainable operation. 2023 really focused on that foundation building and building a healthy organization. So there was a lot of behind the scenes work going on, a lot of table setting for the work to come in the future. 2024 marked a transition into the fundamental marketing, getting those tools into place, and really setting the table for that work to shine in the future years, along with beginning more strategic planning work internally and with the community. In 2023, we launched or developed our new destination brand. In 24, we started to roll it out through our marketing channels and our paid advertising, and found other opportunities that to get that messaging and graphic identity out to the local community and the visitors. You might have seen new banners around town over the last year. We produced 2 sets, one that is out during the spring, summer, and fall in between our citywide events, and then another set that's winter themed that goes up just after Thanksgiving before the holidays. In 24, we launched our first branded paid advertising campaign that had different pulses throughout the year. There was a spring and fall pulse that were really targeted to our core markets and more of that awareness advertising to visitors 50 or more miles away. We had a winter pulse that focused on a staycation message to our local or our regional markets in Bend and Redmond when weather is more inclement and travel from the valley is a little more difficult, to encourage overnight stays to getaways to sisters from our local markets. There are always on components with annual travel guides and search engine optimization so people can find us when they search through Google, and then through leveraging local events, either through sponsorships or promotion materials to reach visitors that way. Generally, the campaign broke down in these percentages via budget: 30% to social, 25% to digital display, 20% to print, 10% to paid search, 5% to search engine optimization, 5% to events, and 5% to sponsored content. And you can see a few of our advertising partners below. This is just a sample of some of the creative that we've been running. This is a lot of the print and digital stuff that we have out there. It really centers around lifestyle, landscape, natural beauty, small town charm, and we mix that with some kind of tongue-in-cheek copy to entice people to want to learn more about Sisters and visit our website to start their trip planning cycle. This is a quick sample of some of the digital advertising that we've run. It's a little more illustrative. Some of it's animated, where you see a series here where it transitions from an image to a message and then to a call to action. This one we ran 2 different giveaways throughout the season, one in the spring and the fall, partnering with local businesses to highlight kind of a weekend getaway to Sisters and encourage people to sign up for our consumer e-newsletter through that call to action. We were pretty happy with the results of the campaign. They met or exceeded all of our initial benchmarks that we set for it. We had nearly 13 million campaign impressions or views via digital ads, print ads, and all the other mechanisms we put out there. We had 51,000 link clicks from those digital advertisements back to our website. We had 22,000 page views alone from our giveaways in the spring and in the fall. And we generated nearly 10,000 leads for our consumer newsletter from those efforts on those giveaways.
Is that percentage, like link clicks, is that good? Is that bad? Is that industry normal?
I don't know what the percentage is on it. The benchmarks were made by industry standards, and they exceeded that benchmark that we put into place, and that was through our media buyer that kind of set those up. So it did meet that benchmark, but I don't know if it exceeded by a lot, a little, but we were happy with the results because we did meet or exceed those benchmarks.
Okay.
We launched exploresisters.com back in January of 24. We kind of had to wait till our brand was good to go. We had enough photography and content to support it. It's a pretty compact website, but it hits all the high notes that we need it to. We're currently working on a phase 2, which is going to include significantly expanded content and new features on the site. So that's in development right now and should launch in the next couple of months. In terms of performance, we had 56,000 sessions on the website in 2024. Of those sessions, that equated to just over 127,000 page views. One metric that I really hold near and dear is those outbound link clicks. We had 15,000 people go from our site referred out to partner sites, whether that's a restaurant, a lodging property. Really, that's what our website should be, is kind of that hub of activity and then a referral out to our local businesses. And then mostly due to those giveaways and the encouragement to sign up for our newsletter, that we had just under 13,000 form submissions through the back end of our website. In terms of where people are coming from and how they're getting here, it's really a mix of paid and organic efforts in terms of traffic. The geography really isn't all that surprising. The lion's share is coming from the Portland area. We have a good chunk out of Seattle, and then following that, Bend, Eugene, and Salem. So no big surprises there, but that's always good to kind of reaffirm where our target markets might lie. Primarily, we operate social media in Facebook and Instagram. Prior to midway 2024, that was kind of on me to post once or twice a week, and it was, scrappy at best. We really ramped up those efforts in 2024, and through paid and organic efforts, our Facebook channel reached just under 3.5 million impressions or views. We had 7,500 engagements, which are links, likes, comments on the postings. And then we have about 2,600 followers right now on Instagram, 105,000 impressions, just over 5,000 engagements, and we have about 1,500 followers. And of note, those followers are all pretty much organically built, which tends to lead to more engaged audiences versus buying those leads and just kind of padding the numbers. So we're really proud of the work that we've made in the last year with our followers on social media and the engagement that we're seeing with the local community and our visitors. Right at the tail end of 24, we launched our first consumer newsletter based off those subscribers that we developed through our advertising campaign. It was just before the holidays, so the messaging was holiday themed about the things going on and how Sisters is a quaint small town during the holiday season that you want to visit. And We had a really great open rate, which is way above standard at 38%. Wasn't as impressed with our click-through rate. It's our first one, so we're going to keep an eye on that, but we also want to acknowledge that, you know, our subscribers came through a paid campaign, and we'll monitor the engagement. And if they're really not interested in receiving that content and they just signed up for a newsletter or a contest, we'll start to back them out of the system so that we have better engagement across our audience. Explore Sisters also helps generate and inspire earned media, and earned media is publicity or stories that appear in news outlets, magazines that we didn't pay for, that are earned. Just a couple highlights here. We track as best we can the media that we see throughout the year. It's harder to calculate the reach of some of that media without a professional PR agency and their tracking tools, but these are just a couple highlights from the year. We had a great article in Via Magazine about kind of the Western heritage culture within Sisters. It was a couple page spread. It gets pretty good distribution, and that's produced by AAA. I'm sure everybody remembers our dear friend Party Bus from the Sisters Rodeo this last season. That got international publicity. I think the farthest away I saw was India, New Zealand, Europe. Definitely, you know, nationally, domestically, every news outlet picked it up. But, you know, I all in all, it's not that all press is good press, but this press never really painted Sisters in a negative light. So it was quite the thing. We also saw a little snippet from High Camp in Sunset Magazine, and that's kind of on the heels of their appearance on Food Network's Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives the year before. So that's kind of another feather in their cap. And then we had a great staycation article in Bend Magazine earlier in the year. We also host travel writers, influencers, members of the media for tours, whether that's specifically for Sisters or in conjunction with a regional opportunity. Most of what we have secured so far has become through partnership with Visit Central Oregon and their professional PR agency. They actively recruit and manage these tours and loop Sisters into that. And then we take on that piece to host those writers and show them around town, put them up in lodging. We had 3 last year. One was an Instagram influencer that also runs a blog. We had an arts and culture themed fam tour. And then when RDM launched its new direct to Dallas flight, they flew in media members from the Dallas market to do stories on Central Oregon and take those back to their market. We opened up I shouldn't say new, but a reimagined visitor center over at the Main Street building, the Sisters Makers building off First Street Park. That opened in late July in 2024 and was open through Halloween, where we gave out candy to the little kids on the last day of the season. It'll be open seasonally. Probably reopen sometime. We'll reopen in spring break and then probably sometime in May for the remainder of the season. It'll be unstaffed for the time being, given our capacity. Currently, I can't sit in the visitor center 8 hours a day and talk to folks, but the times I have been in there, I've inevitably we ran into, I think, a family from France last year, Germany. Like, it's just interesting who you run into in a place like that. In the limited time it was open last year, we have a foot counter on the exterior doors, and it showed 8,000 people came through those doors. I'll be the first to admit that I account for some of that traffic, opening and closing and restocking. And in partnership with the farmers market on Sunday, we open that building and see a lot of traffic go through there. So it's definitely padded, but it still is, you know, I was pleasantly surprised with that number. We gave out about 1,500 pieces of collateral out of the center, and approximately 250 scanned the QR codes that lead to the digital resources from within the center and on the map kiosk that we replaced outside the center as well. We've been working with 2 local photographers. You know, the first year it was, can we have this photo? You know, can we license this? It was really scrappy, but this last year we retained 2 local photographers to really build up our image library, and it really focused on still photography. As a startup organization, we didn't have a single photo. I mean, we're starting from absolutely scratch on everything. So this last year, we developed, I think, between 800 and 1,000 photos from these 2 photographers, and it was pretty lean and mean operation. And this is just a sample of some of the photos that we were able to generate. And it's important that we own the licensing rights to those photos so that we can use them in commercial advertising and in the channels and know that, we're not having to ask for permission or violate permission on any of those rights issues. So going to continue that into 25 and start to focus on some video acquisition so we can have assets in that space as well. In addition to destination marketing, engagements, a high priority for our organization as well. We do that through leadership meetings, through one-on-one meetings with businesses, collaborative meetings within our industry partners throughout the region. I just wanted to highlight a few items from some of our engagement efforts. We're on the executive committee for the vision implementation team. I really like being a part of that group. It's a pretty robust group of leadership from the entire community, from the school to the Forest Service, to tourism, economic development. So we're really appreciative of the seat that tourism has at that table. We were part of the Dark Sky work group that put together an application for community certification through Dark Sky International. I believe we submitted that application right at the tail end before the holidays in 24, and I believe technically our official certification was in 25, so that'll appear on our 25 annual report. But super privileged to be part of that group and look forward to continued work in that space as well. We partnered with Oregon State University's Sustainable Tourism Lab, which is a mouthful. They work in the tourism resident sentiment space. As tourism has gotten increasingly more complex, so has kind of the performance metrics. One thing that our industry is looking at is, how does a community feel about tourism? And to measure that's not a straightforward answer. And they've done this work in over 100 communities throughout the world, and it was an easy ask with them right in our backyard. So we started that in the second half of 24. It's still active. We're going to be doing another push to get that out. It's been through our industry communications. The city's included it on their newsletter. It's been advertised in the Nugget. You can scan that QR code and take it right now. It's in our annual report. So we're going to push that again. Really, we want to make sure that the data set is reliable. If we were only getting 50 responses, and really akin to 250 is that magic number for this type of surveying work, we want to make sure we can rely on the data that we're receiving from that survey. We have an industry section of our website that has a lot of information about Explore Sisters, the resources via grants and other opportunities within the industry. There's data and reports, our annual report, our business plan, all of that's already up there for people to access on demand as they might need. We also send out a regular industry newsletter to kind of get things right under people's noses and timely things for opportunities like grants and events that are coming up within the industry. We send that out once a month, once every other month, depending on the frequency of news we have to share. We develop a lot of strategic partnerships that can be, with the city, with EDCO, with Visit Central Oregon, Hoodoo, our citywide events, Camp Sherman. We know that we can't do our work without those partnerships and without the support of those partners in our community. So that's a high priority to continue building those relationships and finding those collaborative opportunities to work together and to pool resources and capacity, as Michael likes to say, to box above our weight, right? And then finally, Travel Oregon and Visit Central Oregon brought what they call a destination management studio to Central Oregon. There's been only 2 more of these statewide, one on the North Coast, one in the Gorge prior to this. And this is really a regional effort to discuss and identify tourism impacts happening in the region and really getting people rowing in the same direction in terms of outcomes and solutions to some of these impacts. We sponsor, Explore Sisters was asked to be on the core team, which really led the strategy and decision-making behind this process. We brought to the region 6 community workshops, one of which was held here at 5 Pine, centered around arts and culture. And throughout the process, really it was talking about those outcomes and potential projects, because with this work came $100,000 from Travel Oregon to sponsor projects coming out of the studio. I think at the end of the workshop process, there were 120 different potential projects or initiatives, some of which had funding or weren't feasible. That got whittled down to 3. And so now that the workshops have concluded, they're moving into action teams to help support those initiatives. One of those is around high-use recreation and trail infrastructure. The second is around arts and culture and developing potentially a makers and music trail in the region. And then the third one is a dark sky group talking about how do we amplify certification and what comes next beyond certification and how do we leverage that for the region. Might be familiar with this and probably a little hard to read, but this is a chart of TLT collections over the last couple of years. So far this year, from July in 24 through December of 24, we've actually seen some positive news. We're up about 4.5 or 4.2%, which is modest, but still actually a few percentage points above neighboring communities. So Sisters is positioned well. It's positive to see some of the growth in November and December with big percentage jumps compared to at least last year. It's been a wild ride since COVID with the roller coaster there and then kind of a softening and flattening of the TLT. So a little bit of growth is encouraging. So we hope to see that trend and do what we can to help influence that.
And Jordan, can you just put you on the spot here and just explain to everybody the breakdown in the TLT, what the city receives and what Explorer Sisters receives? Because it's hard, you see numbers and you see millions up there, and that's not what Explorer Sisters.
Well, I think you have an upcoming slide that breaks down your budget, right? Or at least it's in the packet.
Yes.
So Explore Sisters receives what, 400,000?
We receive a base of 350,000 and up to 33% of the collections if it's above the 350,000 threshold.
And per state law, we're obligated to spend a certain amount, a certain percentage of the transit lodging tax on tourism-related facilities or destination management stuff that Explore Sisters does. Because we have a TLT that was established before 2003, we have a little bit of the reverse situation where we can spend the majority of it on general government purposes. And so we do collect TLT into our general fund. And then by contract, we send 30% of that to Explore Sisters for tourism purposes.
Yes, I know it's been a big topic statewide to, tweak that program. But as you said, we kind of were grandfathered in. So we're honestly kind of the opposite of many cities where the majority of their money is going to tourism and little to their general fund. We're kind of the opposite. The majority of the money is going kind of to our general fund, and the smaller share is going to Explore Sisters.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you.
Just as an advocate for the value of tourism, I'll throw some big numbers at you that come from Visit Central Oregon that are regional impacts for tourism. Overall, within Central Oregon, and they define Central Oregon as Deschutes, Jefferson, Crook, and South Wasco counties. There's a $1.74 billion total impact from tourism. We welcome over 4 million visitors per year, which support almost 11,000 jobs in the tourism industry, and it's about a $300 a night per trip average spend. So even if you break it down by sector, you can see that there's significant impacts of tourism to our economy here in Central Oregon and throughout the state. So definitely a huge driver for us. Hotel occupancy kind of mirrors TLT. Kind of see the same pattern. We see some lows back in 20 and 21. That was really due to the pandemic. We're tracking a little bit above or ahead of schedule with this year, but that's kind of tied again to the TLT being just a little ahead of where it was last year. So seeing kind of the same patterns. We saw some anomalies coming out of the pandemic with some extra highs, but generally maintaining that same pattern in occupancy in our hotels here locally. Our last priority is just maintaining a sustainable operation. I mentioned that we were doing some strategic planning. We did that work internally with board and staff, and now we're synthesizing kind of that work into a working document and then plan to come up with an engagement plan to go out and get some feedback from the community on that work. And really that's going to be kind of that 3-year guiding light, high level plan for the organization. Be first to admit that capacity has been a challenge for the organization as a staff of one with high expectations and few resources, but I think we've done a good job with what we have in the last couple of years. But towards the end of 2024, we saw our first real increase in capacity when we hired a marketing contractor to help manage some of these programs. We're building websites and email marketing and increasing social media, but every time we add something, we have to manage it. It doesn't just get done and we set it and forget it. And so having somebody to manage those systems and engage in our social media, keep our website up to date, manage our photographers and content intake has been invaluable. So finding ways to maintain that capacity now and into the future, identifying potentially some other sustainable funding outside of TLT and doing what we can to really build that capacity that we need to do our jobs. And then just a quick snapshot of our budget from last year. Jordan gave us kind of a breakdown of what we receive. We had a $372,000 budget last year, and you can see that little graphic in the lower corner. Shows you the general breakdown of where that's coming or where that's going. Most of it's going back into destination management. The other big chunk is going into staffing. We have a little bit in programs and events and data and research, and then we try to keep operations as lean and mean as we can to make sure most of the money's hitting the ground against marketing and our other management efforts. So in 2024 and before, it was kind of this fire, ready, aim scenario where, we're working on the car while it's running. We got to get stuff in place. We don't have time to do all the strategic planning that we really need or want to do, but we need to get there eventually. And so as we transition out of that building phase, I hope we're entering into that ready, aim, fire, where we're a little more intentional and strategic and shoring up some of these fundamental things that we've put in place. So that's what 25 is going to bring, is really honing in on that destination marketing, looking at those collaborative opportunities with partners so that we're not working alone or in silos or anything like that, and being very intentional about our work and really starting to get some of that strategy and planning stuff in place that we just didn't have time or bandwidth for prior. So a quick sneak peek of 25 and into 26, we have a 2-year kind of business plan that we update annually so that we kind of have some flexibility in how these roll out. But destination marketing will probably remain on top of our list as we evolve here into the future. We'll continue to steward the brand that we've created, making sure that it's aligned across all of our different marketing channels, finding other opportunities to bring it into market, like with those banners, developing more secondary elements through our illustrations and patterns to just give us a little more creativity and use within that system. I mentioned we're launching a phase 2 of our website, which will have significantly expanded content and functionality. We look to improve the search engine optimization even more so that people find us when they go to Google and that those resources are right in front of them. We're going to continue that branded paid advertising and refine that over time and figure out, again, partnerships and collaborations to make that work as hard as we can. We're going to deliver that email marketing on a regular basis, probably bi-monthly, every other month for the time being, until we can get it up to every month. We're going to have that robust social media content and engagement that we've seen and try to really increase those owned audiences. The more we can increase our newsletter subscribers, our social media followers, those are audiences that we own and control versus audiences that we rent when we buy paid advertising, because we lose those after the paid advertising goes away. We retain our audiences that we own. Again, expand that visual asset library to focusing on video this year to really that's a beast that continually needs to be fed. We're going to explore those marketing partnerships and opportunities with collaborative partners. Continue to work with Visit Central Oregon and their PR function to work with influencers and travel writers, members of the media. We talked about developing a merchandising program to allow other people to leverage our brand, but still maintain a little bit of control around how that's used, but to get that brand out there through other channels that aren't just owned by Explore Sisters. And then continue those giveaways, highlighting local businesses. I mentioned PR and communications are still going to be an important part of our plan. They amplify the overall marketing reach that we have, the hosting of those familiarization tours and getting media into market, especially when Visit Central Oregon is basically covering the check for that. All we have to do is show up and feed them a meal or comp a hotel room or something for them. We'll continue to do that. Meeting people where they're at with visitor services, whether they need to call us by phone, reach us via our website, have a visitor guide physically mailed to them. We're going to do whatever it takes to meet them where they are in their planning cycle, and then continue in enhancing the operation of the Visitor Information Center. We're currently in the development and towards the end of a formal marketing plan that will be available as a public document to our stakeholders that kind of guides us at a higher level in terms of who we're talking to, why we're talking to them, putting guardrails around our marketing program that's supported by then more tactical efforts year to year. Continuing that engagement is really important to us to make sure we're communicating with our stakeholders and developing trust from those around the role of Explore Sisters and that of tourism in the community, and seeking feedback and input on our work from those industry partners, to make sure we're collaborating and finding overlap in our missions and in our work, to pool resources and capacity to make our marketing work even harder. And then just showing up sometimes is super important. Sometimes, tourism is convening and leading that. Sometimes we have a seat at the table, and sometimes we're cheering from the sideline. But showing up is super important for us and DMOs to really, support the community, talk about relevant initiatives, and champion the value of tourism within the community. And then data and research, really to inform decision-making, track performance, and champion that value of tourism, looking at the existing data, and it's been kind of scattershot all over the place. I would like to aggregate that into more a one-stop shop, so we kind of have a sense of all the available data that exists to date, making sure we're developing a visitor profile that plugs into our marketing program so that we can be smart and discreet about who we're talking to, making sure that we have those knowledge of current trends, and providing access to that data and research to our stakeholders through our industry channels as a trusted source of that information for them. And then finally, continuing to make sure we're a sustainable operation, to make sure we're here tomorrow to carry out our mission into the long term. To make sure we have a strong governance from our board to support staff and our mission, our vision, and our values, to make sure we're building financial stability, both, hopefully increasing and influencing that TLT over time, but also finding potentially additional funding sources that could help us increase capacity and further our marketing efforts and expand our services. And looking at opportunities like grant funding to support projects and programs. We talked about strategic planning. We're going to continue that with some outreach and engagement with our stakeholders to make sure that we're not completely off base with our plan into the future. And then, as one of our most important values, transparency is very important to us. We want to make sure that we're viewed as a good steward of these TLT dollars that we're entrusted, and that we remain accountable for that work. Per our city contract, we are obligated to go under a financial review every 2 years, and we are partnering with an independent CPA out of Bend, Price and Franck that will be conducting that 2-year review and should be available in a June timeframe. Lastly, this is just a quick snapshot of our adopted 2025 budget. Just a couple things I'd like to point out. One, we're operating at a deficit this year. That came at the recommendation of our CPA bookkeeper. Previously, we've been kind of using fund accounting, where we'd start with a beginning balance if there was rollover from a previous year. She recommended that we move away from that practice to better align our accrual accounting method and just operate with a deficit. So that deficit is due to rollover funds from the previous year. You also notice that the budget is $409,000 this year, which is significantly higher than where we were last year, which we'll take it. Really, that's coming from that, base of 350, but up to 33%. So at the end of the city's fiscal year, when TLT collections are reviewed, we're receiving a monthly check based off that $350,000. If it comes in higher, about in August or September, we'll receive a residual from those dollars up to that 33%. And our policy has been to apply that to a future year budget, not just to use it when it comes in the door. So that's why you're seeing that increase in the budget this year. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
With the new transit hub, any thoughts there about leveraging that facility?
Yeah, I mean, transportation is a huge part of tourism for sure, whether that's, for guided services or, shuttle services to get up to Hoodoo and things like that. But also there's, I think, an intercept opportunity for information, to provide some sort of light kiosk version thing, whether that's through QR codes that are pretty easy or some limited materials to be able to get in front of visitors, knowing that from there they're going out and exploring either outdoor recreation or into downtown, but it's another touch point for our visitors. So certainly I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't have, a partnership with the city in terms of getting something out there in front of them that we can fund through tourism dollars.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a QR code question, actually. I like what's been going on. I like how it's being utilized over at the visitor kiosks. I like the concept of something over at the transportation hub when that time comes. I've also had a thought at times, I've seen it in other towns, and whether it's possible or not, but to have some small speed limit sized, for lack of a better word, put it, signs with QR codes on them that says lodging, dining, or whatever. So somebody's walking down the street who's a visitor can scan that QR code and find a restaurant they might be interested in, or find a store or an art gallery that they might be interested in. Because we, as a town, we don't have a lot of wayfinding. At least in my opinion, we don't. And it's not a big town. You can walk around and find pretty much anything. But I also think that the time to strike that person is when they've gotten out of the car and they're walking down the street and say, what a cute little town. Hey, what's a place to get, do some shopping, get a souvenir or eat. So some of those little QR codes along, especially Cascade, on a post. And of course, the nice thing about a QR code is you can change the content that goes behind it at any point in time. And as opposed to a sign that says Bob's Red Mill, arrow.
Right.
Bob's Red Mill goes away, you've got a sign that says Bob's Red Mill.
Yep.
And so something to think about down the road. I realize resources are tight, and I am very much as understanding of that. But I think that there may be some opportunities there as we look at not just destination marketing outside of our community, which is your main focus, and that's what we ask you to do. And there's been some confusion in the community as to what the role is, based on how it may have been done in the past. But that's one of the ways that we can utilize those resources we've already paid for that are in there that the person who's walking down the street can find.
Yep. No, and I agree. It's an efficient way to deliver that material, and there's still people that like kind of the listicle versions of things, and that's fine too. But in my experience, it's been you produce a map. By the time you go through design and production and it actually hits the ground, something's out of date already. A business has moved, a business is closed, a new one has opened. So this definitely gives you that flexibility, but we also want to be mindful that it may be not right for everybody, but more and more folks have those smartphones and it can be implemented in a wayfinding system in a lot of different ways. So it's a really efficient, nimble way to do it. I mean, right now on the visitor center, they're done with static clings on windows in there that they can scan. I think it's about a $20 item if we need to replace it. So I think it can be an efficient way to sustain resources and not have to go back and reprint something just because it was out of date because something changed.
Because I think that's one thing I hear sometimes is complaining that we're not doing enough to support local businesses. But the reality is that's not really the focus of the DMO as we put it together. It's to bring people in to find the local businesses. So now the next step is, where are the local businesses, helping them find it.
That's right.
I'd like to talk a little bit. Obviously, I am the
Goodbye.
council liaison to the board. I've been at every board meeting since it started almost, not the very, very beginning, but not long after. I think the board had a lot of things to do before you were on board. They had to find you. They had to find who the executive director was. But since then, I've been on the board, and I want to make a reminder of how awesome the board is itself. The businesses that are represented on that board are Five Pine, Sisters Coffee, the Bicycle Shop, Three Creeks, Ski Inn, and I know I'm missing some, so I apologize the ones I don't hit. The board is really running the show. They're the ones that are, they're like the city council of destination marketing, right? They're the ones that are making the decisions for Scott to do the things that he's doing. Not only that, they're evaluating him. I sat in on his evaluation this last year. I'm not a voting member, so I don't involve myself in it, but I'm there. And it was a fun process. I think I've done it twice actually now. And it's good to see how concerned that they are with his performance and checking in on it like any reputable organization would do. It's also nice to see them talk about strategic planning in the future and the things that they're going to be doing differently that they're just starting in on because the first 2 years were so foundational. It's been really fun to watch it. I'm a big proponent of it. you can ask the board members yourself if you want to find out. Scott's not the only contact in town to know what's going on with Explore Sisters. Explore Sisters is run by a board, so anybody on the board, including me, you can ask me things. Assistant City Manager Carrie Prosser is on that board as well, and sometimes I look at her and go, she's the smartest person in the room. They get some advice from her because she's so good at running the city, that helping run the city. Sorry about that, Jordan. Sorry. There was a time you weren't around, so, you know, but, you know, she's so good at that she really helps out too with just little things, just, you know, how to take notes better during the meeting, and AI, you know, all kinds of funny little things that she's really good at as well. I want to give a shout out to Greg Willetts. He's the chair. He's kind of set the tone for this first part. I think you're in your last year, correct? So that's going to change, and that's a good thing. I think it's good that you get new leadership once in a while, and we've seen that here, and we're going to see it there. And I have one more shout out, and then I have a question for you. I want to just shout out to Katera. She wasn't named, but Scott was talking about the extra staffing. That's who he's talking about. She's doing a great job. She's very approachable, and she's been really helping out. And hopefully we can keep that going. I don't know how that works, but we're going to try. My question to you is, and I'd like you to try to do this in a way that's not so destination management speak, and just say that, we all know there's a transition. You've been setting up for a couple of years, and, it's going to be more pure marketing down the road. And eventually it's going to be mostly just management and marketing and stuff like that. How does that feel, and kind of where are you at in that process? Can you kind of just give it the easy answer?
The easy answer.
Yeah.
We're definitely moving out of that startup phase. I mean, a lot of that foundational stuff like policies and procedures and fiscal controls and all the really sexy stuff that we want to talk about, that's getting behind us to get into a maintenance mode. We tweak those after review every once in a while, but the focus is really moving into that kind of more I guess the on the ground, the economic impact type of work through that marketing. It was fundamental in the last couple of years, but really refining that. It doesn't all have to go into traditional like paid media. Finding those collaborations, developing programs, things of interest that'll entice visitors to visit. That's really where we want to be long term, and then figuring out where that overlap exists between what is good for the visitors and what also benefits the local community. That's a big piece of it, because it's not just exclusively to our guests. We want a community that's good for our residents, is good for our guests as well. So really finding ways to make that shine, and finding the resources like we have through Katera to free up my time to do more engagement with the community, and to develop those products and programs to really make those dollars stretch as far as they can, and be as effective as they can be, knowing that we don't always have to invest in that strategic planning, and that behind the scenes work, we'll see more resources go to the front end to really create that economic impact and encourage folks to visit in town long term.
You don't want to write an employee handbook every year, right?
I would prefer not to.
Okay, last question. How can we support you better as counselors and as an organization, a city? It always goes both ways. There's got to be things that we can do better. And even if you can't tell us now, make sure you do tell us later.
Yeah, I don't know if I could, off the top of my head, come up with something, but I really appreciate, the partnership that we have, and the fact that we do have this board structure that allows for you to be kind of there lockstep with us. So there's no surprises along the way. You're there every month looking at our financials, interacting with the board. You're sitting through reviews of my performance. And so I want to definitely make sure that's continued, because I think that just allows for opportunities, information sharing. We learn a lot about what's going on with the city in terms of priorities and goals from the council through that interaction. And we're hoping that you bring that information back to the full council and back to the city staff, just so that we're really kind of in lockstep, because those resources are thin, and we don't want to misstep on any of that. So definitely want to continue that. And I feel like we have an open enough dialogue. I meet with the mayor and the council president now on a monthly basis. Jordan and I and Eric from EDCO get together on a regular basis. And so I feel like there's a kind of a free flow of information back and forth, and it really is a partnership. And we're not doing this just in a silo the way that we think it should be done. We're, working with our stakeholders, working with our funding partners to make sure that those dollars are getting used, the way that the community wants, as efficiency as possible. So just want to make sure that that relationship and the open dialogue continues more than anything.
Fair enough. I'm done.
So, Michael, I appreciate you speaking to the board and the work that goes in there. And Scott, I hope you're feeling the support of that board. It's hard to be a one person, one employee, not one person, because no team is one person, but being the person that's there every day and kind of shouldering the daily burden of an organization. I've lived it and I've watched it, and I know that's difficult. And I've seen you out, interacting with a lot of different organizations in the community, and I really appreciate that. And I appreciate how much work these first 2 years must have really been for you, on top of moving your family here to do this for our community and in our community. So, I followed along the DMO speak and stuff too. And I know that all those pieces take time and discussions behind them. I love the photography. I mean, seriously, it's like when I was looking through the documents in our packet, I was just like, oh, sisters, oh, sister, I felt like it really does speak to our community. So yeah. Thank you.
And, all of our efforts, authenticity is kind of at the forefront of all of this. It's, I think consumers are increasingly savvy to sniff that out when it's not. And so to make sure that, we do that through content, through our branding, through our messaging, and through our actions and offerings, it's really important. And I appreciate your comments about, being a one-person show. If you need any perspective, just go ask my wife. Over the last 2 years, it's been a fun ride, and we knew that we really needed to dig in and be part of the community and really set this organization up for success over the years. So that's why having that increased capacity has been a relief at this point to make sure that these systems that we're building are receiving the support and care that they really need. So I really appreciate those comments.
And just one quick comment that related to your hiring a CPA and doing something that we haven't had in the time that I've been on the council, looking at TLT dollars. An actual answer as to, is the money being used properly, effectively, in the ways that it meant to be used? Now, I don't question about that it is. The board and yourself and the folks, the accountability is there, but also nothing proves it like that accounting document that we expect to see when we hand over a little over $250,000 to an agency to do things for the city. And that money comes with strings from the state. And I was very uncomfortable in the past about whether or not we were exposed by how those dollars were being used. And now I have those answers, and I thank you.
You're quite welcome. Can you get them to lower their prices on financial reviews?
Yeah, wish I could.
Mayor, I just wanted to chime in, thank Scott and his collaboration with the city, especially with Dark Skies. I know that's going to be an accomplishment for 2025, but you were a big part of putting that application together, making it look pretty and everything. I think there's opportunities coming up over the next year or two on grant opportunities, events, enhancements to our parks and stuff all around the Dark Skies. And that great accomplishment for the city. And we're also, to the mayor's point, we recognize that it's only a one-person shop there, and so we've talked about additional opportunities to collaborate on things like wayfinding signage and the branding, and kind of coming together with that for our own purposes in our parks and things like that. And then we have some opportunities too for creating more opportunities for tourists and our residents, like the Northwest Park. Of course, the East Portal was mentioned, or our mobility hub was mentioned as well. So, there's opportunities on the horizon, but we also have to recognize that we have limited capacity too. We don't want to monopolize his time on our projects, and you're working for a much bigger industry in the sisters country and promoting destination management here. So thank you for your work, and look forward to continuing to work with you.
You bet. Thank you. Me too.
And similar to the conversation about waste management earlier in our recycling depot, just to clarify for everybody, he gets our transient lodging tax dollars from inside the city of Sisters. So that does not include Black Butte Ranch or Camp Sherman, anywhere else except from within our 2 square mile footprint. Yet you are, de facto helping those organizations as well. And I feel in the future, there could be some conversations that need to be had with some of those companies and communities. And I know that you work with Visit Central Oregon, who does receive those dollars on their behalf. So, and you have a good partnership with them. So hopefully you're feeling at least that you're getting something commensurate out of that deal at the moment. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I'll just end with an anecdote. I was having my anniversary dinner at Black Butte Ranch last week and ran into some old retired Forest Service colleagues there from Bend. And I said, well, what are you doing up here? And they're like, well, we're having a little staycation. We're staying in Sisters and we're gonna, head over to the valley tomorrow. And I know you and I had a conversation earlier about, sometimes it's not focusing on, Seattle or San Francisco to get people in. It's really the people within, half an hour drive. That could be a huge financial asset to our community. And that was just a great example of people that just thought, well, we'll just go half an hour and stay in Sisters and have some fun. So I think that's a really great strategy. I know I vacation a lot locally too, because it's Central Oregon. There's just so much to do. So I think that's great.
Because you could walk there.
Well, also I can, places I can walk to are great too.
Looking forward to the merch too.
Yeah.
I know there's a push for a little bit of merchandising using some of the branding that we've done. And I can't wait because I like merch. So, and I'll buy it.
There's one little piece of it in the
There you
room
go.
right now on top of somebody's head.
Oh, no, oh, awesome. So a little, see the little S on her.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
There you go.
Maybe.
Tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
And thanks everybody's patience that was a great presentation, but it's a lot of money, it's a lot of taxpayer dollars, and we feel really, it's worth the time to take a deep dive, so appreciate it. Next up, we have, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office Annual Report from Lieutenant Chad Davis. I'm expecting something as equally in depth and as long and with some good branding and,
Photos.
um,
I think their photos were a little better, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Sure they are.
the badge is nice and shiny. We do like that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is our second annual report that we've ever done. So Rebecca's going to help me with advancing the slides. So we can go ahead now. I just kind of wanted to highlight the folks who really make our operation work, and that's the deputies, Deputy Hudson, Deputy Pearson, Deputy Myers. I am, and I'm sure you all are too, we get constant positive feedback from the community about the work that they're doing and the connections that they make in the community. The way that they know the people in our community, and that's visitors, that's business owners, that's our houseless population, that they just make everything work. I just wanted to kind of talk about a few things, just their community engagement through, our events and then in the schools is just very helpful to us. Relationship with the business community as well as our community partners, the school district, Forest Service, Black Butte Ranch, Oregon State Police. They really make it happen. Quite often, one thing I was thinking about the other day was just hearing a call, and the deputies knew exactly who was involved in the call just by hearing the call being dispatched and the description of the people involved. Just, the people that have constant contact with our deputies, the deputies know and have good relationships with. That really helps us become more efficient as we respond to our calls. So I just wanted to highlight them. In this last year, we continue to participate in community events. We hosted our community academy as well as National Night Out. We participated in Sisters Park and Rec events such as Halloween Trunk and Treat. We're going to be participating in a emergency preparedness event that I've been working with Jordan and Nathan Garby with sometime in May. That date will be announced later. We also participated in school events, parades, citywide events such as the Quilt Show, Sisters Folk Festival, and Sisters Rodeo. You can go to the next one, Rebecca. Just another photo coming up, just a National Night Out, plug for that. That'll be August 5th. We host that every year at the Village Green Park. That will be partnering with Sisters Park and Rec, Sisters Fire, and Deschutes County 911. So August 5th, put that on your calendar. Good event for,
It's my birthday. Thank you.
yes, we have,
Get double ice cream.
we're looking for any new ideas, things that we can make that better. So please come by there. We'll have more information coming out about that as we get closer. The next slide, there's just kind of highlighting deputies from other divisions coming and presenting at the Community Academy. That was the photo of Deputy Zook from our Special Services Division talking about all the work that our volunteer staff as well as paid staff do at from our Special Services and Search and Rescue Division. In those events, we talk about all the different aspects of the Sheriff's Office and try to educate the public about what we do. We welcome input from the council and staff on other opportunities that we can participate in the coming year. I know as part of the survey, there was talk about additional community events and things that we can do to support. So I just look for your feedback on that. If you see a gap or someplace where we could be plugged in and engaged, appreciate getting that. We'll just jump to some statistics. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the 2023 statistics, but that's in your packet. And I'll just kind of jump to, we'll go to the 2024 stats. And basically what we saw was pretty good increase, over 700 additional incidents in 2024. And that's a combination of not only calls for service, but also self-initiated activities from our deputies. We can jump
She's
ahead.
changing the slides, but they're not changing. I can see it on our screen over there.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's in your packet, so I'll just jump to, if you have in your packets to 2024 and just talk about that. As far as, those self-initiated incidents, those were up. Some of our traffic numbers were a bit down compared to 2023. And then basically in our crime case reports, so we were down about 13 from 23 to 24, which, that's about, one a month in difference. So really not much of a difference there. And then arrests were down 4, so not very much over the course of the year. We did have about 37 more traffic stops in 24 than we did in 23, and about almost 300 more community policing contacts. So that could be patrolling in a school zone, contacting a citizen on the street, that type of thing, answering a question for someone that flags us down. And then I'll just jump to kind of the last page a little, just kind of in summary. I kind of already talked about the cases that we had. So pretty much flat as far as new crimes being reported, which with the more calls that we're handling, I guess that's a good thing. Crime is staying relatively flat, but we're going out and engaging the public more, whether that's in traffic stops or being flagged down or contacting people at our office. Theft and vandalism continue to be our most common crime that are reported. Property crimes, person crimes are pretty much flat or down. I guess it did go. You advanced or was able to go forward. So we can just go to the last slide. That's fine. And we can answer questions if you guys have any specifics on the other ones. So basically in 2025, things that we're going to be working on is just continuing to engage our houseless population. With the Cabin Butte and China Hat closures that are expected here in the next couple of months, we're going to be monitoring that with the Forest Service because we expect some impact from that. Folks being moved out of that area, and so folks may be coming out to Sisters to find new places to live in the forest. So we're going to be working with the Forest Service just to keep tabs on that and engage those people. Obviously, we have contract negotiations that are in progress on our new contract for 2025. And then we received one new patrol vehicle, a patrol pickup here about 2 weeks ago. So now you'll see 2 Dodge Ram pickups that are marked with City of Sisters logos. And then we'll be receiving one more brand new Dodge Durango SUV to replace one of our older ones. So so you'll be seeing some newer, shinier cars out there.
I need a ride.
Yeah. So, we're just looking for, more continuity, from our deputies and just contacting the public and answering those calls for service. But just highlighting the work that they're doing. They're doing a great job. So, any questions?
Thank you for that. And looking at the numbers between 2023 and 2024, how many deputies did you have in those years?
So, we've been at the 1 lieutenant and 3 deputies, since basically 2021.
Okay,
So yeah, same staffing levels, for that time.
all right, thank you.
And we're obviously helped by our West deputies that, a lot of these numbers also come from our West deputies. They're handling calls for service when we're not here. They're making traffic stops, they're investigating crimes, responding to calls as well. So their numbers are also included in our city of Sisters stats.
Thank you.
I have found that when one steps into the crosswalk at the roundabout and the sheriff's car stops for you, traffic in the other direction stops as well. So you have a clear path through both sides of the roundabout. So I'd like to encourage you to do that more when you see me walking through town. It was amazing. I don't know if it was you or not, but someone stopped and then the cars all the other way all stopped. And no one's going to take a chance. The sheriff saying, well, you didn't stop for that young man. So.
And that, on that note, we are gonna be doing some pedestrian enforcement this spring once the weather improves. We talked about that as a request, so we'll be doing some pedestrian enforcement
And all joking aside, it's because there is a presence in town and you're seeing, and I think that has a positive impact. And while some of these numbers were down and they didn't seem too significant to you, anything that goes down related to things on this chart to me is significant. Because I think it is somewhat indicative of we're not wide open. There are people here, there are people watching, there are people going to respond. And, vandalism is, when vandalism is your biggest crime, as much as I hate vandalism, I've lived in places where it was the biggest crime.
Right.
So thank you.
I definitely want to thank you for the pedestrian shout out. We have a couple of our citizen pedestrian traffic engineers here in the room tonight, as a matter of fact, and they always remind us that, vandalism is bad, but we really don't want to get anybody run over in a crosswalk. And we've had a few minor injuries in the past few years, but luckily we've been pretty good so far. So thank you for emphasizing that and listening to the community and listening to council about that. We're working with ODOT on some special lighted crosswalks over the next couple of years. We'll see how that goes. And we'll have more information on that at another time. But thank you for emphasizing it from your end, because I think it really is, there's 3 or 4 legs on that stool. It's not just council, it's not just the public, it's also you guys as well and ODOT. And I think if we work as a good team, we can make that better for everybody. Thank you.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I feel safe.
Yeah. Should we, well, is there anything you think we should know about with the change of leadership in the sheriff's office? We should be aware of or looking forward to, or is it kind of too soon to tell and we'll know later?
I would say it's business as usual. The deputies just go out and do the work and I'm working for my 6th sheriff, and basically the job doesn't really change regardless of who is at the top. We have new direction, at times and new focuses that a sheriff certainly, and priorities that a sheriff can put out. But I would say morale is good. Our City of Sisters deputies are engaged and they love being here. They love being part of the community. So as far as that goes, not really any change. I would say that change can be good with some new perspectives, as we talked about earlier tonight. Just new leadership, breath of fresh air, and some new perspectives on things is a good thing. So, but no substantial changes to what we're doing here. I know Under Sheriff Wells was out here today for our contract negotiation, and so he and Captain Bailey were both out here and engaged and trying to help on that process. So
And you have at least another 20 years before you're planning to retire, as I recall, correct? correct?
Yeah, to be determined.
TBD.
So.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, now visitor communication. Sorry about that. It usually is kind of our first item up, but it got a little switch this day. We're going to start with visitor communication in the room, and then if there's anybody online who wishes to share anything,
Stephanie Presley.
we do ask that you state your name and address, and also if you can keep your comments to around 3 minutes, it is appreciated.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Presley. I'm the Executive Director for Sisters Trails Alliance. I'm looking forward to presenting to you at an upcoming meeting about all the happenings at STA. But tonight I'm here with high school student Tegan Welsh on behalf of a group of partners working with the Sisters schools to request letters of support for grant applications for a school nature path. So the Sister Schools environmental science educators are looking to build a nature path to get students of all abilities outdoors to study the natural world. They've already built bat boxes and had 3 collaborative outdoor projects with elementary, middle, and high school students surveying native plants in the forested area between the new elementary school and Highway 242. An outdoor nature path and learning structures along with planned greenhouses will allow them to continue grade level environmental science themed studies of insects and birds, geology and botany, and the very popular middle school's Earth, Community, and Self, or ECOS class. There are many benefits we all know of getting children outdoors and connecting them with nature. The original idea was for a nature path in front of the new elementary school in the wooded area between the school and the Highway 242, which is what you see in the packet that I sent to you via email yesterday. The project team has expanded that idea to complete minor improvements to existing single track trails on the north and west sides of the high school and build a single track path through the disc golf course area. And then ABA, accessible path, would be built in natural areas in front of the elementary and middle schools, similar to the tollgate to high school path. And then in the future, outdoor learning shelters such as a teepee at the elementary school or a gazebo at the middle school with interpretive signs and plant identification signs would be placed along the path. The school's already applied for 2 small grants and will be applying for a small grant from the Oregon Parks Foundation. And we learned today that Roundhouse would be interested in receiving a grant proposal from the project team. And they'll be sharing additional foundation resources with us. So on behalf of the project team, who's working to build a nature path for our students and our educators, we would respectfully request that the council provide what could possibly be multiple letters of support for this very exciting collaborative project. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I truly appreciate your consideration and time and all the work that you guys do. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we can talk about this afterwards. We usually don't do Q&A during this phase, but we can discuss it at the end of our meeting. But also just make sure that, Rebecca or Carrie has the specifics on who those letters should be written to.
I do have one quick question.
Breaking the rules.
Are you involved in this project?
Yes. For my AP government class, currently me and one of my partners who couldn't make it here today are going to be trying to get involved in some fundraising at the school, as well as like putting up posters around specifically the high school, but probably all of the schools if possible, to like raise awareness and try and get support for it in that areas.
Thank you. I figured there was a reason you were here.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Ed Owens.
Madam Mayor, City Council, my name is Ed Owens. I live on 313 Aspenwood Avenue. Been a resident of Sisters for just over 7 years now. All of you should have an email from me in your inboxes. And Jordan, I sent as what I could to you. I think it's been shared with you, the email and the stuff. So back in 2016, I'm guessing from the history before I was here, this council and this city decided to approve plans for an assisted living facility. That assisted living facility has been, for many people in this community, a jewel. We talk about community already tonight. We've talked about this all the time, the sense of community in this city. That facility and the promises made to the city of what it would do for our residents, their parents, their grandparents, the people who needed these services, who moved their families here for these benefits to have an assisted living facility. After the pandemic, of course, the facility went up for bankruptcy. And there's a lot more to this, and I won't get into it. The bottom line is the new owners that purchased this brought in a management company, and they have decided to fire all of the professional staff at the lodge. They have voluntarily surrendered their assisted living license back to the state, which is a several-month process. They gave no transparency or warning to the people. And this week, they were all served notice that if you can't live up to these new standards under this new model they're creating, including all of our residents, these are our most vulnerable citizens. These are disabled veterans. As a veteran in the community, I'm passionate about that, but I moved my mom here into this facility because this community is about community, and we take care of our people. 16 of them who are on Medicaid have been told they must leave. They will not care for them. The remaining citizens who live in that community have all been told that they will be independent living facility. They're still going to be charged like $5,000. By their own admission today admitted that the management company, they come in, they maximize profits, and by getting rid of this license, they are no longer under state jurisdiction for how these seniors are cared for. It's going to be contracted out to third parties. And all they're going to do is house who can afford until they can't afford it anymore and kick them out. It's disgusting. This is not what this community is about. I have fellow brothers and sisters who live there who are been told they have to leave. As we all know, assisted living and care facilities in Central Oregon are limited as we grow in Central Oregon. There's very few options. I know of 2 of them that have had to find a place already in the last couple of days. They're going to have to go to Portland or leave our Central Oregon community because of the decisions made by an investment company that came in, bought this when it was in bankruptcy, and are literally trying to maximize what they can take from our most vulnerable population. I'd love to sit down with you, Mr. Wheeler, because I've an investigative background. So I know who the developers are that purchased it. And through about 4 different LLCs, they have purchased other land in this city with plans. Is that the type of people who would do this to our vulnerable population that we want having plans for this city in the future? As a resident, as a voter who's never missed an election, I don't think so. And there's a lot of families that are hurting, and there's a lot of seniors that are scared. And I'm asking for this council to look into this, because these are our family members. These are our citizens, and this is our community. And what type of community do we want to create and foster and invite people to move here, including people to live in that facility, if this is how they're going to treat them? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to say that I'm going to comment on that situation in my portion of my comments.
Sure. I think we all have some words about that, but you know, it's a public meeting, so.
Yeah,
we'll have to
right.
Clean them up.
Some words
but
we're going to have to parse for
yes,
sure.
right.
I have no other visitor communication
Okay, online or here?
or online.
Okay, thank you. Okay, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Oh. Uh-oh.
Well,
Thanks for speaking up.
yep. We do miss things once in a while.
Cents worth. Marvin Inman, live at 1654 West Aiken Avenue here in Sisters, been here about 9 years. And I was really thrilled to hear that when this assisted living took place, you guys approved that and they got built. I don't know if there's anything you guys can do in the future to put some type of requirements or standards on something like this, that this doesn't happen again, that a company comes in and cuts everybody off at the ankles and they've got to leave. Their business plan, the person that owned that property should have told somebody that they were losing money and there was a good chance that they're going to have to stop the assisted living. I heard a person at the meeting today, and I'm fairly certain he said he just got his mother in there in January. They should have told him to hold off because there's something that may change. So he put all this effort to put his mother in there. And he got the rug pulled out from underneath him. And I think there'd be more of an oversight when something like this is developed in the city, that you have some guidelines to protect the citizens. And like he was saying, that's a very expensive motel room right now for those people. And I think it's going to hurt the community. And it's going to be a black mark on Sisters. And that's my input on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I forgot to
Aye.
say aye, but I did. All right, next, other business. Jordan Wheeler with his new,
This is a
well,
new thing, right?
new segment on prior meeting public comments.
Well, that was an exciting. Never mind.
Yeah, I'll just summarize a couple of the comments and report out on a few things. Last meeting, there was a workshop on the urban growth boundary, and we kind of separated the comments that were specific to the UGB and the alternatives that the council was receiving on that workshop from the rezone application at the county, which is still being processed. So there's a few comments about the rezone application during the council public comment period. To close the loop on that, the council requested a letter to the county to expedite the review if at all possible, and it was we tried to be kind about it in that letter. So that's been sent to the council for your approval, so we can ship that off. We've had phone calls with their staff, obviously, about it's coming and what's being requested there. And then there was comments about the wildfire hazard map, which is a popular topic in town and across the state right now. And in particular, there was a request about the city appealing on behalf of residents or doing a citywide appeal. The county did do a global appeal for county properties, called a global appeal, but I'm just kind of reading the headlines there. Earlier this week, the city council directed staff to draft a letter to the Oregon Department of Forestry about our concerns, rather than appealing, which our understanding for appealing is on our specific properties that the city owns, which we do have 7 that would be in that high hazard classification. So we drafted that letter for council approval, expressing our concerns, and also mentioning that we do have properties that seem to be classified in some odd way because of the data sets and kind of the time lag. When you have a rapidly growing city, you have development occurs that maybe the property used to be maybe high hazard but is medium. All that being said, legislature is working on potentially the repeal, which seems likely now, or a change to the Senate bills and House bills that establish the wildfire hazard map. So all this might go towards not, although the governor did freeze any action on the wildfire hazard map going forward. she also directed that appeals can go forward just for folks to continue to be able to appeal. Although what happens with that appeal if the map's repealed is yet to be seen. So that's sort of an update on what's happening there. We've also drafted a letter for council approval to Senator Golden, Jeff Golden, who out of Ashland, who is sort of the author of some of these bills and some the leader there in that committee that's been working on this, and so we have another opportunity to kind of express our concerns, but also our interest in being able to adopt building hardening standards and defensible spaces here locally to protect our community. So that's sort of an update on what the city's been working on with wildfire hazard maps and our wildfire efforts, but also the other public comments. Capture everything?
Yeah, I haven't had
Okay.
a chance to read the letters yet. I was busy all day with other city stuff, so tomorrow.
Yep, and I was driving back from the coast, so I didn't see them either.
I mean, I saw them come in, but I certainly didn't read them yet. so.
Reading and driving?
Oh, Judy yells at me when I do
No.
that. My wife yells at me when I read and drive, so.
Yeah.
And Mayor, if I can, this is sort of a response to a prior public comment, but I know Mr. Maines is here and has had comments about pedestrian safety and crosswalks. The mayor and I had a meeting earlier this week with ODOT, and that was one of the very topics that we had was about how do we work together on more locations for RFBs, the rapid flashing yellow beacons. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that we will have our first one being installed with the next phase of the Woodlands development. But we did talk about whether the other key strategic locations through town on Cascade, those beacons, those flashing yellows could be installed. There didn't sound like they were against it, just there's a funding challenge and there's grants that we can apply for, maybe to cost share on those. Some work would have to be going into the study of is it feasible, ADA access and all that, but I think the council kind of shares the goal of pursuing this and finding the right locations to add additional pedestrian safety tools like that. And you also heard from the Lieutenant Davis tonight that I've been talking with him about doing some pedestrian sting activities and more enforcement coming up this spring to bring more awareness about pedestrian safety through town. So appreciate your comments, and yeah, we're on the same page. So.
Well, and I will say I was in Newport this weekend with the Seafood and Wine Festival where I was working, and the town was full of people. And you drive down Highway 101, and those little flashing lights make people stop. It gets their attention, as opposed to the crosswalks where it's sort of a, can I make it or can't I make it, and be ready to jump back. Those things do work, and they have them all along 101, so I'm all in favor of them. I have been for a long time.
Yeah, and we also highlighted that a lot of the striping on the state highways within the city has faded significantly, which is impeding safe crossing. So they're aware of that, and we'll get that addressed
After they build the bridge
sometime
at
this
Portland.
year.
It's their paint, not our paint. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's their street.
Their highway.
Yeah, it's their highway.
Do we have our flags on that corner? Snow cap? Our crossing flags?
Is there crossing flags on that one? I don't.
Yeah, there are, but they
kind of disappeared for a while.
there's a one in Snowcap I saw it the other day, but they move around and they disappear too. They go out and all of a sudden about a month later, they're no longer seen. And I think somebody collects them as souvenirs or something. I don't know what else they're doing with them, but
Those are privately,
funded, yeah.
donated. Well, yeah,
A lot of people have one sitting in their home accidentally.
They're all over Oregon.
I think we should put them on a horse collar, and then that way they don't walk off with them.
Yeah.
I was just thinking if we're so dependent on ODOT, obviously, and that is a dangerous intersection, what could we do? And if it's at least putting more flags out there, let's do it, whatever we can do. It's just so dangerous.
Yeah, that was my comment to them. That was my example intersection
Yes,
that
it's terrible.
I had to cross that the other day, and nobody was interested in stopping, but yeah. And then I looked down on the ground and I was like, oh, because all the paint is gone. That's why nobody's stopping. Okay, staff comments.
Yeah, just roll right into it. We'll have staff come up and maybe Paul can address some of the other things we talked to ODOT about and some updates on that. You heard from Lieutenant Davis, we are working on that renewal of the public safety services contract with DCSO. I'd say the negotiations are going really well. We have updated numbers. Contract language is pretty close. So I think in the next couple of months, we'll have that in front of council for workshop and adoption. And I don't anticipate any major issues. I think, as you heard tonight, we're pretty satisfied with the services and looking forward to kind of continuing that.
Put them through the ringer. Oh, sorry, you're still here, Lieutenant, sorry.
Well, if they can afford a new truck.
Yeah, right, new trucks, we want new
We're
trucks too.
kind of paying for it.
Oh, kind of.
The community partnership on houselessness, we're going to meet next week. So we're continuing to work on the action plan and the next steps with that, especially with additional partner outreach and involvement in this effort. And then, of course, the public involvement component to that when we do have a agreed upon action plan to kind of vet with the public. So that's going to be the next week. I mentioned already the letters that we drafted for council approval. So if I get your nod tonight, we'll go ahead and ship those off. In fact, if you'd like to sign them tonight, we could do that. So appreciate your review. Coming up on March 12th, we have a soft confirmation to have a joint workshop with the Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District. I think 3 of their members so far said they can make it. So if we do a 6 p.m. workshop with them, I think that works for the mayor's timing that evening. If there's any agenda topics, happy to get those. But I think what generally we're going to be talking about is wildfire resiliency, and then probably kind of sharing what the council's focused on with goals, which wildfire resiliency is a big one. And so that would kick off one of our joint meetings that we're scheduling. The joint meeting with the school district board will be the next meeting. Remember, there's no meeting during spring break, so April 9th will be a joint meeting with the school district board. Happy to get your input too on the agenda for that. But
Is that a home or away?
both will be home. We're hosting all these joint meetings, including another joint meeting coming up in April, and that will be with the Board of County Commissioners. So one thing that we may talk about at that point, it may be ready to talk about the police services contracts, since it's actually the county board that approves that ultimately. So that may be something we can touch on, but I'm sure we have other topics to talk to the county about. And then, we'll start with Paul in Public Works for updates. They're a little rusty since I've been doing them for the last 3 or 4 meetings, right?
Got a little bit of experience with them. Got a few things. So East Portal, we're going to be starting back up next week. Contractor's going to be, excuse me?
I said, good.
Oh, okay.
Already.
Yeah, we got sunshine. So snow's gone.
If you hadn't noticed, this is the peanut gallery. I mean, there's, you can't say something without a word coming out.
It could be my hearing. I don't know. But so they got, concrete work in front of them, curb ramps, lighting, obviously base prep for asphalt on both the parking areas, the access points, and the multi-use paths around the entire site. But they should be making pretty quick work of it. We've heard from the paving contractors that they're going to be looking at getting their paving plants going, hopefully beginning of April, which we'll start seeing asphalt out in town. So we received our DEQ approval on our west side pump station, which is good. We're still waiting on county approvals and ODOT as well. So those should be coming here shortly, and then we can get that project out to bid. We got a roundabout landscape kickoff meeting tomorrow. So we'll be looking at schedule, potential cost estimates, what those are going to look like, their public outreach plan, dealing with our 5 neighbors that we're going to be working with, and then their overall project timeline. So we had a high water event over the weekend. Sunday night it peaked. It was unfortunate that the water resources flow gauge was not working. and we're not sure why. I reached out to Oregon Water Resources that owns and operates that, and that's right on the Locust Street Bridge. It's always great data to have. You can watch it peak, you can watch it, what it's doing. So instead, we were out there with flashlights Sunday night monitoring the Pine Needle line to see if we're still going up or coming down. And then in the morning, it started receding and it's continued that direction.
I saw it on the Weather Service website. It was reporting on there.
Going straight to the gauge site, it's no data available. And Sergeant Garrity couldn't find it either. So he reached out directly to Jeremy Griffiths.
It was dumping at the coast. I was checking, with the backyard.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Oh.
Yeah, Jeremy Griffiths came back with an estimate of 600 CFS is what it peaked at. So, yeah, that's coming directly from the source.
All right. Yeah, it was on Weather Service for some reason. I don't know why. Interesting.
So a couple things with ODOT that we're working on. So I reached out to their traffic manager to talk about speed zone studies now that we have fully functionable roundabouts. And taking a look at that, he gave me some good information, some good guidance. We'll get those requests into them. They're a year out to do their studies. So we got to get our queue in line. And then we are looking at getting a small city allotment grant, which is up to $250,000. Get an application out fairly quickly. It's got to be in by April 30th. And it's really for this corridor on Locust, from the roundabout, essentially all the way out to Barkley. Looking at pedestrian crossings, where they are, where they're not, where do they need to be, curb ramp updates, ADA improvements, potential removal of a turn lane to decrease crossing movements, signage throughout the whole corridor, and really take a look at safety improvements along that corridor now that we have, the beginnings of our alternate route coming off that roundabout. So, and then the last one was, let's see, I think we touched on the RFBs out at the Woodlands. I questioned about the potential for RFBs at right around the Five Pine entrance, so Buckaroo Trail. Try to get a crossing there, and got initial feedback from Mark Barrett at ODOT. There's some options. It's not great. There's not a lot of right of way on the inside there. And when you take a look, as you drive out of town next time, you got that huge wall. And trying to fit some type of separated path in there is going to be tough. So we're going to have to try to figure out how to get those people, and maybe it's a mid-block crossing. It's hard to say, but we do have some funds available for that project that came from the redevelopment of that property, that we can start doing some design work, some preliminary engineering to try to figure out the best place for a crossing out on that east side of town.
Is that block wall in the state right away, or is it on private property?
Private property.
Just curious. I know
Yep.
it's off close to the road.
Yeah, there's not much with that turn lane. It really ate up the right of way in there. Yep. Anything else? More than happy to answer any questions. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Scott, community development?
On the property.
Sorry, Peter. This is staff updates, man.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have much to add that hasn't maybe already been touched on tonight by various folks and maybe in recent times, but just kind of reiterate kind of what the direction or the next steps on the UGB are, in addition to what Jordan had mentioned, is that we'll be taking the two options for a draft preferred alternative kind of forward and start to refine those internally about what those boundaries are going to be, and do some additional analysis, and we'll take that back to the steering committee, and we've got that date scheduled for April 24th. followed by May 1st with the Planning Commission, and May 14th with the council, where we will reassess what's going on with the county rezone application for Mackenzie Meadows, see what the status is, and that kind of help us determine, do we kind of continue to wait that process out, or do we decide to go forward with what we got without it? So the good news is we checked with we did, if this process goes an extra 5 months or so, we're good with the budget with the consultant. We found that out today, so that's good news that they can accommodate if the process were to get extended. We can do that within the existing budget. We did the RFP for proposals for the Northwest Park Master Plan closed on Thursday of last week. We got 6 proposals submitted, which was good response for that. And we've got a interview committee consisting of Jennifer Holland from Sisters Parks and Rec District, Doug Bill from the Parks Board, and then Public Works and Community Development staff that will review those proposals and see if we want to interview all 6 of them, or if we can whittle that down into 2 or 3 for an interview. And those interviews will occur next week. So if successful, we'll bring back a contract on March 12th to you guys for consideration. So that's moving along. Defensible space code amendments are going to go to the Planning Commission for public hearing on March 20th. So we're getting close on that to moving that one forward. Have several site plan review applications in for consideration right now. We did recently approve the Trinity Way site plan review, and I'm not sure, I think it's getting close to clearing the appeal period time, but that's good news, and hopefully that project will proceed to building permit here shortly, and that they request a system development charge deferral, hopefully, because they're the ones that asked for it. And I see that the construction plans for the large commons west and east habitat project have been submitted to the city for review, so that project is moving forward. You may have noticed that there's been some action out at Sisters Woodlands with some tree removal going on. That's to start the phase 3 of that master plan. So you'll see the tree removal and then infrastructure development going on here shortly. That phase 3 does, and I'm not sure if they're going to make that connection to Highway 20, but it does, I believe, include the Sisters Park Drive connection. And then phase 3 and phase 4 of Sunset Meadows, the plat for the later, I guess we've got phase 1 and 2 complete with the apartments and the first phase of the townhomes and the single family. The phase 3 and 4 plat is ready to be filed, so that'll allow them to, they've already got some building permits in the queue, but to basically go forward with vertical construction out there. So that's about all I have to offer right now. Is there any questions? No? Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of action.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. I just have a couple things very quickly. We just recently published our annual financial reports. So that was kind of a long time coming. Good feeling to get it all done. So that's a lot of compliance goes with that for our bond and things of that nature. And then we also published by statute our URA annual report, and noticed that in the nugget. I don't know if you saw it. And that was in January. So we have to post that kind of notice twice. And that's more for the citizens and the overlapping agencies to kind of see the impact of the urban renewal agency. So yeah, those are 2 big milestones, and we're kind of just rolling into budget season. So we've been having some meetings. We have kind of our health insurance, those projected increases will come out probably tomorrow, actually. So we'll definitely integrate those into our personal services projections for next year. And then, yeah, the budget meetings will be here before we know it. So exciting stuff in finance. That
When will the ask come out for dates for budget meetings?
We've got a couple dates in mind. I've been working with a couple budget committee members, but probably actually by the end of this week, we'll have some solidified, at least some options that y'all can choose from.
Thank you.
Okay.
How are the campground reservations?
Yeah, I was just looking at that. So we're at about $136,000 so far. So, I think last year at this time we were like at 115 or 120. So we're definitely trending in a good position there. Yeah, and again, we have all of our camp hosts are online. That's always good. And always get a little nervous that some are going to back out or something's going to happen. So yeah, knock on wood, everything is going in the right direction there.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Prosser.
Here's where she gets back at me, guaranteed.
Just as a quick note, we do have an Explore Sisters board meeting tomorrow, but I did some rough calculations back there with Joe's input, and it looks like they were up roughly 29% in TLT in January in Sisters. So January was good for us. So that's good for our businesses and for Explore Sisters. A couple other things just to cover. Roundabout Art, we've got our 2 finalists. We will be meeting with the committee on March 13th, and then they will be, the 2 models will be out for display. Tentatively, still working with a couple things, but at the library from March 15th to 31st, we did move it out of City Hall based on some of our hours and that the library is open a little later and is open on a Saturday. So it will be going to the library. I've been working with them on that. And then we're also hoping to move it to, on March 1st, I'll move it from the library to Sisters High School. It'll be there for 3 days, and that will hopefully allow the students and the teachers and any parents to take a look and make comments, and those will, I will also reach out to the elementary and the middle school, and hopefully they can bring classes over to look at them at that point. So trying to get them a couple different places. We had a meeting today with the creative, I'm still working with the Creative Cultural District group. It's the state of Oregon and the Oregon Arts Association. We meet monthly. Dennis Schmidling from Sisters Art Association is also on that call. And really it's just about, there's no funding. They thought there would be funding 2 years ago in the legislature for this project, and there's not, and there likely will not be this year. But it's just a group of local art, not local, regional and state folks that meet once a month and talk about districts and what they're doing and what's happening within the art space in Oregon. So it's actually pretty beneficial just to be kept in that loop. It's a good group of people. RHC, the Regional Housing Council, and the Coordinated Houseless Response Office held meetings on Monday that I was with Councilor McDougall. I'll let her speak to that. But it's a new kind of format, particularly for the Coordinated Houseless Response Office, which I think is pretty effective, and I feel like they are moving some things forward, which is positive and really keeping some momentum going there. And then lastly, CLA, our Civic Leadership Academy, begins April 14th. Applications are due on February 28th. At this point, I believe we have 18 applicants in. So if anybody's doing the last minute thing, please let them know to get those in. And we were still doing the planning stages, but I'm looking forward to that starting in mid-April. Any questions?
I have a question about the Cultural Arts District. I was really excited about when I first heard about that a couple years ago, and kind of pointed everybody that direction, and you kind of like taking the ball and run with it. I know it's not funded, but because people are still talking about it, don't you think eventually there probably will be some funding down the road, and we're kind of set up to be part of that down the road?
So initially, even when we were asked to join this, part of it was because Sisters already is set up in that way. To some degree, we have an arts district, not a cultural and arts district, but we do have that. So we are already to some degree well ahead of other cities. But places like Pendleton are moving really quickly towards doing this with their art association. So people are moving forward without the funding. And again, you're right, if something comes up and funding does show up eventually, people will be ready for that, and there'll be some systems in place. So yeah.
All right. I like it then. Thanks for doing that. I know it's kind of extra in the sense that there's no clear goal yet, but it's good to have the collaboration, right?
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's everyone.
And that's everyone. Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Council, would like to start with some updates.
I'm comfortable. I'm not going to take very much time. First of all, the nature path, 100% behind it. I'm a firm believer in outdoor education, getting kids outside. As an educator, I realize the value of getting people out of the classroom and into the field. So, and I want to thank you for bringing that young lady with you today as a student. That's why I broke protocol and asked. I just want to know why she was here and give her a chance to speak. On a different note, the Mackenzie property, we've seen letters to the editor. We've had several letters about why are you delaying the process? Why are you stretching the process out? Why are you trying to include it? Essentially, we're not. We're saying, let's see what happens. If it gets rezoned and we're in the process, we have to consider as priority one lands as part of what we're looking at. So we want to be sure it doesn't hold us up. We also want to be sure that if it does get changed in time, that we're ready to address and deal with it. So that's what that one is. And related to the discussion on the assisted living center change, it's despicable. There's very little that we as a council can do about it. In my humble opinion, it's private business activity, and the problem is not just there, it's nationwide. We're seeing a lot of this because of reimbursements from the federal government on Medicare and things like that taking a long time to show up or being cut. So I wish I had an answer for you. My mother was in a facility like that. I understand how important it is. But aside from expressing my extreme displeasure, there's not a lot I can do to affect change on what has occurred there. Unless somebody knows something I don't know, that's pretty much the sad truth.
The one thing I kind of wonder about, and in recent history especially, it seems like there's been a lot of judge type people that like to get involved in things like this where they can throw an injunction to slow the process down so at least the people can get some representation and have some time to do that. I don't know any judges. I don't know how you do that. I'm not a legal expert by any means, but I just want to say it out loud just in case somebody might listen to this and hear it and go, oh yeah, I kind of know how to do that. And then maybe we can, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there to see if something will stick to the wall, Again, I think there's a lot more that we can't do than we can do, but we can raise awareness. And I'm sorry I couldn't come to the meeting today. I already had a meeting in Redmond all day for the first 5 hours of the business day. So
I was out of town.
yeah, but yeah, we'll talk offline, you and I. I mean, we know each other. We've known each other a long time. We'll talk offline and see if there's not something we can do. And doing nothing, that nobody wants to do that, but we have to know what we can do before we can take a step on it for sure. I think it's fair.
I don't think state landlord tenant laws applies to assisted living.
Well, that's the horror of it all. They don't have any representation anymore. Once they gave that license back, their assisted living license back, they're at the mercy of these new people, whoever they are. But we'll talk about it. Should I just continue on since I
Sure.
started talking?
we're-
Are you
we'll
done there,
get to
Gary?
that.
Oh, yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
So we talked about that. The trails letter, I'm just interested, I want to make sure before I say, yeah, is to see the plan and see what the updated plan is. I don't think I'm going to be against it, but I do like to look at the details a little bit before I throw my thing at it. But I'm likely going to be able to support the letter. It's not that I don't want to do that. I just like to see the details sometimes. On the Planning Commission liaison, we had a meeting last week. I spoke for about 10 minutes before. The lights are coming on when I'm talking to them. They kind of see about why I'm there, and I'm there basically to tell them what we're kind of doing and what's coming down the pipe on our end. And if they have questions, please just come to us if there's anything that you need. And then I have to skedaddle because they're about to have a public meeting. So it's actually kind of a cool little thing. And I think it's going to produce a lot of collaborative fruit down the road, just at least so they feel loved. I mean, there was times when we didn't have a meeting with them for a whole year and they're like, what, does the council even like us? Do they care? What are we doing? And I think that as our city grows up, and we've done a lot of new things over the last 4 or 5 years, this is one of them. And I think it's going to work out just great. It's not going to be a super rigid thing. I don't think it's anything that's earth shattering. I think just having an open line of communication between us and the Planning Commission is just kind of cool. And now when I walk in, they start asking, just even before the meeting starts, they're asking questions and stuff. Just being present is sometimes a good thing. Somebody said that tonight. Who was? Who was it who said that? But anyway,
We're looking in the mirror.
yeah, yeah. You can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up. So if you show up, you obviously care, right? So a lot of people care and don't show up. So we don't need that. We need people to show up. Anyway, local EDCO meeting, we had one, right after our goals session over there at the Makers Building. Sherman from, I forget his last name.
Aaron Bloomer.
Yeah, he was there from, OSU Cascades, and I learned a lot more about that whole thing than I ever learned before about how he's working with COCC as well. They have a pretty ambitious plan to have 5,000 students by 2030, and right now they're at like 1,500. Even if they only get to 3,000, I think that would be awesome, because that means more of our kids staying in the area. Or even better in a lot of ways is people from outside of here, on the other side of the valley, getting out of Salem and coming to see what Central Oregon's all about, which I think is pretty special. So that's cool. That was a nice.
I think it was really interesting how big of a percentage of the students at OSU Cascades are from
Other areas.
from Central Oregon.
Oh, it's from Central Oregon.
Yeah, you know, because they said over the years there was this fight of like, why do we need another university in Oregon? And it's because it's just the 2.5 hours, 3.5 hours over there is just too much for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are
And
people that are,
the learning center's open.
yeah, and they're making it happen over here, which was really exciting to hear.
And it's absolutely gorgeous campus. I've been on it a few times. And they're doing some really special stuff on cleaning up, that whole area.
Yeah,
I mean, because it was nasty.
The process.
The county used to just drop trash in there. So,
I was out there when they were removing several
Hummus mine.
100,000 tires. from the
Right.
Pit.
Yeah.
They'll now have a building in it. So.
And lastly, real quick, had the EDCO regional meeting. It was a strategic plan retreat at the COC campus in Redmond, which is, again, kind of cool to see, us in a place of learning. Beautiful building, never been there before, right across from the airport. And it was more strategic planning. There was more sticky notes used than I've ever seen in my life. I have pictures and I can show you. It's a multi-month process. That was the first meeting. That we're going to have 2 more maybe or something like that. It's about a 3-month planning process. So that was just a kickoff. It was good though. 50, 60 people trying to get all their ideas on sticky notes, and they're going to distill all that information much like our staff does for us once in a while. Any questions? That's all I got. I'm ready to go. Don't forget we have URA.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have a half an hour. Okay.
You can if you want. But nobody
Yep,
wants that.
That's a path line. Cheryl?
Cheryl, do you want to go next or?
Sure, I'll go. Senior assisted living, obviously, very disappointing to hear that. I had an opportunity to meet some of those residents there through my Romeo's Joy community project, and just amazing people, and really sad to hear about this. I'm wondering if anyone's reached out to our ombudsman, which I believe is Chris Lang. Okay, well, Chris needs to get back here right now. I would definitely reach out to her if there's any assistance she can provide. I attended the Representative Levy and Senator Broadman Town Hall, along with Councilor McDougall and Mayor Letz. It was standing room only. They broke it up into 2 town halls. There were so many participants. It was really nice to see the interest of people to be there. And I was happy to hear that they've put together a bipartisan Central Oregon caucus and have their first meeting and trying to work together for Central Oregon. I'll leave some for you guys to talk about as well from that meeting. I had an opportunity to tour a business here called Box Kill. This is Paul Rollins and Andrew Shar. They're at the old Lair facility. They, through innovation and talent, are challenging the status quo in regards to the construction process and rethinking about that whole construction process. Less labor, building a home more like a car with a small footprint, that affordable housing hopefully could help affordable housing, would utilize fewer materials and less labor. So I'm just amazed at some of the talent and innovation we have within our community. And it was a pleasure to tour Box Kill. And if anybody has an interest in that, I can set that up for you. And I think that's it for me, keeping it short.
Okay. Go next, or I can.
Yeah, sure. Let's see, on the path, I love the general idea. I would also like to just see the final plans, but pretty much 99% sure I'll be right there. Because, yeah.
Why not?
Well, yeah, why not? I mean, this is a town full of trails, and I also like the kind of some of the connectivity as well with that. And yeah, I just think that every child has different learning styles, and so um, n- any diversity in that is a benefit to the whole system, and it's going to affect kids who might not be successful in other learning environments. The assisted living, that's a travesty. I am, I feel sad that there's not something I can do. I feel like I don't, I, I, my mom had Alzheimer's. There are challenges to getting somebody into a place. Moving them is traumatic. And I just want you to know I feel for you. If there's something I can do, or you think we can do, we could show up somewhere, I'm there. I know that, I mean, from a legal perspective, we're pretty slim, but if there's something else we can do, you know, I'm a body. Um, yeah, I'm pretty horrified by that situation. Sorry, my head is full. I'll tell you what, 2 months into being a new counselor, woo, lot of topics, full. But it's good, having a great time. As Assistant City Manager Prosser mentioned, she and I went to Redmond on Monday night. We went to my first coordinated houseless response office and regional housing council meeting, followed by last night I went to an event at the West Side Church in Bend called Understanding Homelessness in Central Oregon, where I saw some of the same people that were there Monday night. Not to mention the person who is our best connection to the Mountain View group in Redmond, who is like kind of on the forefront of safe parking. I think these two organizations that we're part of, plus the group that meets here in Sisters, I can feel it. It's a complicated topic, but I feel like there's starting to be enough information for us to put the action plan together that, you know, we'll be looking at next week, but actually take some new steps. I mean, when I say new steps, it might take 18 months for a step to happen, because anything we do here, you know, really does need a lot of community input and education. But yeah, I'm excited to be part of that. And one last thing, I brought this up a month ago maybe, but I went to the fire mitigation meeting in February. Yeah, and the next one is next Tuesday, and I'm interested in going. So if anyone else is going to that meeting, could you just email me, let me know, and that way we'll make sure we don't have a quorum at that meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Trying to group these together, a lot of transportation stuff. I attended the COACT meeting, which is about every 2 months. Central Oregon Area Commission on Transportation. So obvious, and then I had a couple meetings with some ODOT regional local leadership as well over the last couple weeks. So ODOT doesn't have any money, and that's been made clear. you know, if they can operate through this year, and beyond that, it gets very, very dire. Yeah, obviously the State House is working hot and heavy on some sort of funding package, reimagining that, hopefully. I'm hoping it's not just a Band-Aid, but something that actually is kind of robust and can get us through, you know, another decade or two. You know, they're kind of working with kind of archaic financial constructs, and so it would be nice for them to evolve from that. But, you know, in these conversations, one was with Explorer Sisters and a business owner here, talking with the new leadership, kind of explaining our economic impact to the city of Old Mackenzie Pass and bicycle access in the spring, which has always been, I wouldn't say contentious, but just the messaging has always been confusing for people. And it's, you know, basically because ODOT is a transportation agency. They are not a recreation agency. So they are not really allowed to do anything that is specifically kind of focused on recreation. So when the gate is closed and there's a sign that says close, it's closed, enter at your own risk. That is their messaging. They are not an enforcement agency. That is also their messaging. It's closed. Yes, it's closed. Enter at your own risk. But we had a good conversation, so they understand the economic impact to our community in a shoulder season, when we don't have a lot of visitation, especially in May and June. You know, so we kind of made that clear, and we made it clear too that our community is very willing to work with them for some creative solutions, whether it's messaging or futuring. You know, I suggested maybe that they kind of, because it is not a transit corridor anymore, that they change ownership of that maybe to state parks or turn into a county road, and it gets them out of the business of, or the restrictions of it. They can only function in that transportation box, you know, but yeah, just trying to advocate on our businesses here, with ODOT. And then obviously you heard about the other meeting we did have with leadership on a lot of different safety issues and planning and future planning, things like that. So good conversations around transportation with the city. Jordan and I had a meeting with the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office and the chief, Chief Ruiz Temple, which I think was a good conversation in regards to fire planning, the fire map, things like that. You know, State Fire Marshal's office does not have anything to do with the map per se. That's still Oregon Department of Forestry, but she did, you know, she tends to kind of think that the wording that we've been really hung up with in our process, she felt almost like that was more of like a Scrivener's error or was a mistake in this last iteration. That was her interpretation of it, you know, but we'll need clarity on that. So it was kind of good to hear. And she also said to all of us, thank you very much for being on the vanguard of writing our own code and moving forward with our defensible space code. She's very proud of what we're doing here. And I said, thank you very much. It certainly would be a lot easier if the state had some really great code that we could just plug in and not use all of our staff time and funding to create it from the ground up. But here's where we are, and that's okay, because we're just trying to do the best to protect our community. So that was a positive conversation. Attended a Sisters Business Association networking event with Michael. That was a good attendance of some business owners, just getting to know each other, which was great. Attended the EDCO luncheon with some of us, and some great speakers there. A huge attendance, was like 800 people, something like that, I think. Great attendance, Central Oregon businesses. Phil Chang usually writes a letter to the editor about once a month in the bulletin, and did call out Sisters in his last letter and the work that we are doing with defensible space. Kind of threw us some kudos there, so appreciated that. And attended the C4C sponsored the Traveling Children's Museum here, so attended that, and that had a huge attendance. So thank you to C4C for giving us kids something to do, us kids, our kids. Some of us are always kids. And yeah, I think just circling back to you know, support letter for Sisters Trail Alliance. Yeah, I think in the letter there was kind of a plan in there. If you want to, yeah, send us a couple more details about maybe future stuff, but, specifically what the grants are really geared towards. And I think, I think we'd be happy to help you out with that. And also just make sure we know what the time frame is that you need those letters. And that, yes, in regards to the Sisters Lodge, it's just heartbreaking and, the Sisters Vision implementation team, we've always been struggling with, there's been this issue in the Sisters Vision about medical services. And, this is my 5th year on council, and, our medical services have, with this, declined consistently in the last 5 years, even though that we have had some successes in bringing in some new providers, and this is just another blow. We don't need to be losing medical services. We need to be growing them. So it's extremely disappointing. This brings in a bigger philosophical question on, what can the private market solve in our communities versus what does government need to do in our communities? That ongoing debate we've had for 300 years in our country. So apparently this is going to continue. So if there's anything the city we can do to help, we will. And thank you for coming tonight. I know I asked you if you could squeeze in the time to come and speak, and I really appreciate it. And we'll further the conversation with staff and see if there's anything we can do. And like I said, part of the reason I wanted you to come is just the more people know about it, the better.
Yeah, and at the very least, we can serve as a conduit for sharing the community's concerns and use whatever influence we have as, council as a community leadership here. I did ask Scott about sort of the planning, land use approvals and what it was approved at and things like that, like just in case there was anything there to look at in terms of code enforcement or whatever. But, it's a residential care facility, assisted living facility is a definition in the code, but these developments are typically approved, under residential care facilities, which can include assisted living and other types of residential uses. And so changing the nature of it doesn't necessarily mean it changes the whole use and they have to reapply for any kind of land use or anything like that.
It may be, given the nature of that particular business, I mean, this is the horse in the barn issue, but it may be something we want to break out from underneath that and have it as a separate designation. Because I think if it had a separate designation, they would have had to go through a land use process, would have slowed it down, given an opportunity to try to find the right kind of people in the background to help us out. But neither here nor there. I mean, we can't change that, but I think in the future, as we grow and we look at, other potential facilities coming in, we may need to be ready to respond to that.
And I did forward your message, Mr. Owens, to Representative Levy and Senator Broadman. And Representative Levy did respond and said she had flagged this for the Oregon Long-Term Care Lobby in the State House, and she'll circle back on it when she has more information from them. So, yeah, I did what I could there of elevating it at least. So, okay, I think that is all. And we have one more short meeting after this. So that concludes our council meeting for the evening. Okay, I call to order the February 26, 2025 URA regular meeting. Roll call, please.
Board Chair Letz.
Here.
Is it 9 something?
Yeah.
Agency Member McDougall.
Here.
Agency Member Preedin.
You bet.
Agency Member Ross.
Yep.
Agency Member Pellerin.
Here. Okay. Do we have any visitor communication?
Nope.
All right.
There's none.
Okay, thank you. No consent agenda, so agency business, council goal setting. Jordan and Mike, not Mike.
Oh,
On this mic.
I know.
It's late. Sorry if that said council goal setting, because this is Urban Renewal Agency Board
Right.
Oh,
goal
sorry,
setting
yes.
here for the Urban
what I
Renewal
was saying.
Agency. So last week, we sort of ran out of time. I think it was a move to sort of free up and create a separation between the city council and the business of the city and the Urban Renewal Agency, which, you know, by definition in law, it's a separate agency. It's the same board. The board members are the city council. But it does make it kind of distinguish between the two because the activities are funded different. And of course, there's a different board that has different meetings and all that. So just to review, the Urban Renewal Agency was established in 2003. I think most of you have been through this enough with the budget committee and everything to understand how urban renewal works with tax increment financing. So in 2003, there was a frozen base established of the assessed value of our district. And then that assessed value creates the tax base for the increment. Anything over that frozen base is the increment. That increment is the tax money that comes into the district, which is about 480,000-ish. Yeah. Oh, nice. And then you use that tax increment, those taxes to pay debt that you issue to complete capital projects and administrative costs and things to administer the district. But mainly it's to accomplish the projects that are identified in your urban renewal plan. So the good news, bad news about Sister's Urban Renewal District and the Urban Renewal Agency is that a lot has been accomplished. If you look back in the original plan, there was about $10 million identified in projects for the maximum indebtedness for the district. We are through a lot of the projects, a lot of the accomplishments that the district set out to do have been done. And so we're kind of getting down to sort of the last twilight years of the district with a few more projects, one in particular that's left to do before we sort of run out of time and we have this soft commitment. Maybe I shouldn't say soft, but we have this commitment in the plan to not issue any new debt beyond 2030. So basically sunsetting the district, not issuing any new debt, and that will reduce the burden, the future burden on the division of taxes for the overlapping tax districts, and then eventually closing the district. So in your packet, we put together sort of what we did with council goal setting and reviewing the existing goals and sort of the progress on that. You know, earlier, or I guess that was last year, the line of credit was secured for the projects that are in the current budget, which includes a workforce housing grant program, which grant was awarded to Habitat for Humanity, the roundabout landscaping and artwork project, and then we also have the West Side Pump Station, which was budgeted. A couple of those projects are probably going to roll into the next year. Doesn't necessarily mean they need to be a goal, but it just will be something in the budget that we'll have to account for because we won't be able to expend all those, the funds for the landscaping and artwork, for example, and probably for the workforce housing too. We still need to work out that agreement with Habitat. The funding strategy, construction timing for the Adams Avenue streetscape, this is in progress. We've been working with a consultant. That's one of the reasons Joe's up here is your finance director. We've been working with a consultant to do updated financial projections for the district to understand what our debt service capacity would be. Could we issue, how much debt could we basically issue now to do a large project before 2030 to basically use as much of that remaining maximum indebtedness as possible. And the reason being, the last time we looked at this in 2022 when the plan was last updated, we had a little bit of remaining on that maximum indebtedness. So if we have 9.7, 9.9, was it
It's
the total?
total, yeah, and we have like 6.4 left. But with the update, we only obligated $4.7 million. So there's still a decent delta there that could be used between, our maximum indebtedness and kind of that project agreement that we presented during that plan update.
I have an idea.
Can
Let's
you-
spend it.
You, so I just heard a few numbers. So 10 million, 6.7, then
Yeah.
so what's
So,
the end number? we have?
You're right. And so it started at 10,
Yep.
like Jordan
Gotcha.
said. And then, during the plan update, we came up with an additional $4.7 million worth of projects. Some of those we've been doing, some of those are yet to be done, but that also leaves a little bit extra still that we could do in capacity. If we were to update the plan, maximize, okay, with the 4.7 million, we're not maximizing the maximum indebtedness. It was kind of it was a little head nod to the overlapping districts saying, hey, we got these many projects left. This is what we want to do. But with some of the resources we still have, do we want to maximize the maximum indebtedness? And that could be up to, $6.7 million. So, that delta about $2 million different between the 6.7 and the 4.7 there. But it also comes down to what we could debt serve, right? And so that's what we're going through right now in this exercise, is to engage a consultant that works with a lot of urban renewal agencies, and they can do the financial projection of, $500,000, plus an increase every year, of course, and how we could serve that debt and what we could get for it. Because if we can get, that larger amount, maybe it's worth to do a worthwhile project in town. So.
And that project, really, the remaining large project is the streetscape improvements for Adams Avenue. And the last time we looked at this project was 2022, I think in the spring, summerish, when we got the cost estimates on that, and it was $4 million. Things have changed since 2022. Some things have gone up, some things have gone down. Are there different things that we can look at in that plan to maybe look at the cost? Could we phase it? Things like that. So that's something that we want to do, is sharpen our pencils again and look at what those cost estimates might be, because these things hopefully will come together where we're able to, we have $500,000 in tax increment coming in. How much debt can we issue and use that $500,000 to service that debt? Can we get enough cash through that debt issuance to complete the project, or is there a delta, and where does that, remaining amount come from? Is it general fund? Is it street fund? There's other, sources, grants, things that we can look at. But that, really comes down to your goal setting tonight is, other projects, ideas you might have that are in the plan, or if not, do we need to look at a plan, update to add back some projects or add new projects into the plan to accomplish this next fiscal year? Just looking at your goals last year or in the current year was, looking at Adams. And so we kind of sort of made that assumption that we're going to continue this work to looking at what Adams would cost, and if we could come up with enough funding in urban renewal to accomplish that project and even get rolling on it, since we have 100% plans all ready to go. We get updated cost estimates and then work with our bond counsel and our financial advisors to see if we can go and get that money to do that project.
I have a question. I know I'm tired, so I hope I can say this right. If we decide to move forward with Adams Avenue streetscape 100%, it's going to use the rest of this, and it still may not be enough. Is that correct?
Potentially.
Yeah.
It's going to be close. There's not going to be a whole lot left over. Okay. That's what I need. That was
And my follow-up to yours is that includes if we would increase the maximum indebtedness.
Yes, I mean, you wouldn't be able to do that without a dramatic plan amendment. But I think what you could do is get a little bit creative with how you fund it. And that could come from different sources, like Jordan said.
General fund, street.
We have enough we do have enough remaining in the maximum indebtedness to do the project. It's the question of, do we have enough to service the debt that we would need to issue?
Gotcha.
To maximize it, yeah. So yes, if we couldn't fundraise the difference, what we would need to do to put up against that maximum indebtedness, because that was a number that was shot out in 2003, with revenue expectations. So I mean, with $500,000 plus, you'd think that it would be a feasible financial structure, but not all banks are used to loaning URAs. So that's another challenge, but definitely something.
And a follow-up to that then is if we use this as our big goal to kind of max everything out, it doesn't leave us any capacity for anything else other than what's already on this list, right?
Correct.
We can't add.
More than likely.
Realistically add another $200,000
No, I mean, unless you're leaving things on the table, right? If there's
Yep.
still a couple million left in the maximum indebtedness, but we still have this 2030 deadline, right? So we probably wouldn't be able to go and issue more debt. You know, you might be able to squeeze some in at the very end in 2030
Okay.
or something, but it probably won't be worth it to do a
It's
project.
so complicated.
So the danger, may be the wrong word, but the rub is that we go ahead with Adams and we don't have enough to service the debt, so we have to dip into the general fund, or the road fund, something along that line to do so. And that could impact projects that we have on the burner that we are waiting for money to complete, such as Barclay.
Right?
Well, we wouldn't issue any more debt than what we couldn't service out of urban renewal. It'd be the delta between what the project cost is.
Right.
So if it's, say we issue, we go and get a $3 million loan or bond, but the project's $4 million, well, $1 million has to come from probably the street fund, which would, then,
Right.
yes.
That's what I'm referring
Push
to.
Barclay
So-
phase two
So I think
out.
that until we have that number in front of us.
Yep.
It's very hard to make an informed decision. As much as I want to see the Barclay streetscape get done, we put a lot of work into getting that ready. I also want to see Barclay get done.
Adams.
Yeah, I'm tracking you.
It's late. It's
It's
very
late.
late.
It's very
You
late.
mentioned your brain is full, it's coming up my ears. And so,
Agreed, yeah, we've got to figure those numbers
Yeah.
out first, which, yeah,
so
lines up with the.
do you need a goal structured such that that happens, or have we already got this in front of us with what you guys are suggesting as a 25-26 goal?
I mean, nothing's holding you to adopting a goal tonight around urban renewal. I mean, I think we're flexible enough and nimble enough that we can develop a budget that actually we can come back to when you have these updated project costs and some of the financial projections, and then work that into the budget. Really tonight we're kind of gauging if there's other projects. I know building hardening in downtown and other things.
That's what I was
come
gonna
up.
bring up.
And if that is a priority, or if that's something else you want to consider, then we want to be able to take that into account while we're doing these projections that, we need, to keep 100,000 or 200,000 aside, not spend the full amount on a bond for Adams yet.
That was what I was gonna bring up, was building hardening.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a slam dunk. The URA is built downtown. It's what we're using it for, and I don't know, is it worth just saying, you know what, let's take 200,000 or whatever and putting it to the side and say, we're gonna do that, even if it's not in the next year, at least a year after? I don't know.
Or at least have a goal saying, well, a goal to come up with a plan.
We could do that. A goal to possibly set aside $200,000 for.
The goal to find a goal that gets us to the goal that
Yeah.
we want to have for a goal.
Goal.
And it might be, we might have to update the project list, which is a minor amendment to the urban renewal plan. It's, I think, an addendum to the plan, but because there's financial assistance as part of our urban renewal plan, it's just not specifically called out like building hardening grants or whatever. So we might need to do that, but
Yeah, it's pretty broad language. If you remember, it's loans, technical assistance, grants, incentives. So I think, that Corey and Carrie kind of had that in mind of give it a little bit of flexibility as to what we could do with those funds. I hopefully I'm not speaking for them. Pretty close, Carrie?
So I guess it's just up to us. Do we want to set aside some building hardening money? I mean, that's exactly what I was gonna bring up. Cause it's a real easy place to do it. The money is kind of already there in that regard. And we can even decide a year from now that, well, let's change, we want, maybe we find a grant from somewhere else to do building hardening, and we can just say, oh, let's just divert it back over to Adams Streetscape.
Question related to the discussions we've been having about doing some demonstration around this building of defensible space and things like that. We're not talking about this money to do that, or are we?
we haven't been. It is in the district, but
As long as it's in the district, yeah.
Right, I know, but
yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say, and like I said, I'm thick-headed now, is this something we were looking to do within our existing city budget? Or do we need to think about dedicating some money in that direction to help with the work we might want to do around this building in terms of landscaping, defensible space, marking distance. It's sort of the demonstration garden, I guess I'll call it. Do we want URA money for that? Or do we try to fund it in the city budget? I don't know what Paul's thinking. but-
It feels self-serving to me a little bit. You know what I mean? It kind of.
I'm not,
No.
I don't understand like magnitude, like how much is that?
Yeah, what is that? Is that 100 grand? Yeah,
We don't know.
it's more than 10 and it's less than 100. It's in there somewhere.
When you talk about building hardening,
Yeah.
could you get into more detail about that? Would that be?
I think like helping some of
Anybody
these
who-
businesses that have absolute wood siding to maybe get them to upgrade
Like to cement.
siding.
Yeah, cement
It can
wood
get
siding.
quite expensive, you know?
So maybe it would be like a city grant to them to do that? or-
Yeah, I think we have to decide for ourselves, because we're the policy body, right? Even as the URA, we'd have to decide. And we would get recommendations from staff, obviously. Do we want to do $10,000 grants to help them do it? Or do we want to do bigger grants to just do it for them? I don't know. I mean, I would want to spread the money out as much as possible, obviously. So, you know, maybe $5,000 or $10,000 grants, but when you're siding the whole building, you're talking, you know, $50,000 to $100,000 minimum, probably.
One, I think that, it's laid out well in the proposed goals, secure financing to fund the priority projects outlined in the URA project list, one of which is this. So I think you can identify that separately in the goals and then
And decide.
decide exactly how that's going to look.
Yeah, the program itself, we don't have to decide now. I just
And
know
not
it's
figure it out
super
tonight.
expensive. How much did we spend, URA wise to transforming downtown? You know, wasn't that a URA project?
Yeah. Oh, some facade grants.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trash
Hundreds and
enclosures.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, so.
Yeah.
The only other thing I can think of is if we wanted to use these dollars for lighting retrofits for dark skies downtown.
That crossed my mind too.
I don't.
To about
We-
ours
we-
or other people's, helping other people?
Yeah, I think,
Well,
that's another.
That's a good question. I mean, we have plenty of our own streetlights.
I got a sense that with the self-serving comment, thank you very much. No, just easy. I get a sense that really what I think you'd like to do, and I don't disagree with it, is use this money to help the businesses as opposed to help the city, i.e.
That's kind of that's just how I feel about it. It
And
doesn't
I have
mean
a,
that's-
I have a mixed feelings on that, but, and I've thought about doing lighting conversions, but maybe part of it is really to look at going to all of our businesses in the downtown area that have an awful lot of exterior lighting.
Sure.
And looking to retrofit that exterior lighting around the dark sky.
Right.
So because if I'm running a quilt shop, I'll pick on somebody, my lighting and signage is older. It's all designed to be around bringing the customers in my door. It has nothing to do with dark sky.
Sure.
And-
To the Director of Finance's point, though, we don't have to make that decision tonight. We just have to set aside the money as a goal.
Yep.
And then we can figure it out.
When we're less rummy.
Yeah. Rum sounds good right now. So.
Oh, we can come back. I mean, it's like. I
Yeah,
said, there's-
we can all think
There's not
about
an
it.
urgency in this. It is it's mainly for us to get a sense of how to build the urban renewal budget, right? And.
Yeah.
I think we want to talk about it amongst ourselves or whatever.
You want me to?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but but I think it sounds like we're all basically on the same page of a few projects and goals.
Mhm.
Those three things that we talked about, the lighting, the hardening and Adams Street.
Those are
Um,
the things.
So yeah, I mean, I think if we could get some numbers and options, then I think we can probably finalize those.
And,
Is it-
and keep the art in here, right?
Is it rude to
I
ask?
mean, it's already rolling in.
Yeah.
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 Dumb question.
Oh, wait, she had a rude question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
first.
Go
Then
your
you- then
question,
you got
my
the
dumb
question.
question.
Is it rude to ask it? So, the Adams Streetscape project, is it modular enough that there are things that could be taken out of it to save some money, or is that just causing a lot of extra work?
I mean,
You-
the quick answer without, I'm not trying to answer for Paul or anybody who is, involved in designing it, but yeah, I mean, it can value design or engineer certain parts or do certain parts and phases, but it all comes back to what can we do from the financial side? Until we figure that out, we really
Yeah.
can't do much else, I guess. I mean, our staff is tremendous about being creative in that respect. But again, we
Comes
don't
down
know.
to-
We don't know that, yeah, that max number. Can we get to that number? What is the estimate, updated estimate? Looking at all those things first is probably what makes the most sense before we try to figure out how to do it.
And we're not gonna know the final number for a while, so it's like,
There,
kind of plan
yeah.
for it, but at the same time, it's gonna be here or here, and
Until you go out to bid, and
yeah.
there are, you could do a bid alternates or something like that. I mean, you could strip out the side streets, and the alleys and things like that, but,
Inside.
eventually you would
Crossing.
want to do them, so that's where you get into this.
I mean,
general fund
if
or
we're
street
gonna
fund
do the
figure.
project, I'd like to do the project.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
I wanna
thinking
do the
more
whole
along
thing. I think it's
lines of,
cool.
Are there levels of nice? Do you know what I mean? It's not like
We buy cheap street trees rather than nice street trees.
no trees.
Plastic street trees.
Flame resistant.
Glass.
I'm gonna go to bat for Adams. Maybe we need to get the plan out and show, show everybody again, because
Well-
it transforms a whole nother block of
It does,
town.
and it-
Like,
Right, but
Amazing.
we have finite resources, so we're going to have to make some decisions.
Right.
So if we're gonna go all in on Adams, that might mean that we can't do all the other things. It's, so.
Right.
Or
You
they're
know,
coming out of other buckets.
They're coming out of other.
I'm
buckets,
I'm all right with getting a little creative down the road and at least for now, trying to bite the whole apple.
And I want to throw my dumb question on the table, and that is that we can do safety improvements in the corridor, roundabouts and stuff like that. Can we do safety improvements that involve flashing lights under, well, I mean, if they cost money, we have no money to pay for it, and it's something that the community and others are asking for. Is that an appropriate expenditure of some funds? It's not a lot of money, and don't get me wrong, but as we think outside the box, that may be a box that's worth thinking about to get this pushed a little bit sooner in the process. And I have no idea, so I'm gonna leave it at that, and I've thrown it on the table. Somebody will remember, because I won't in about 20 minutes. And I think that the goals look fine to me. I like what I'm hearing about putting something to just kind of keeping it broad, and you'll come back to us with some numbers and some concepts and ideas. I like the idea of hardening downtown. I like the idea of dark skies. I like the idea of Adams. I mean, we may have to make some hard decisions at some point in time, but
Tonight's not a good night to do that.
it is not.
Yeah, I think we made enough progress on the art and landscaping. That's moving forward. I don't think the council has to have a goal, or the board doesn't have to have a goal around that. And I think with the West Side Pump Station is gonna be off and running here. So it really does come down to Adams and building assistant, business assistance grants. Yeah.
Building assistance. That's
Yeah, and yeah, we can schedule something to come back to you when we get some more numbers and stuff too. It's one of the awkward situations we run into with goal setting being in the middle of a fiscal year, which you might want to reconsider how you do goal setting.
I don't think it's horrible to talk about right now, but I also don't think it's horrible to not make the decision until we know some more information.
I think that it's 9:30 at night. We have staff here. I'd like to be at least respectful enough getting them home before 2 a.m. So
Or tails?
I'm comfortable with bringing this back when we have a little bit more stuff to be actionable on, and comfortable with the goals as they are, knowing that some of them are basically going to fall off by the end of the year, like the pump station, and go from there. Now, if that makes everybody else uncomfortable, I'm willing to sit here and do this, but I also want to be a little respectful of the folks that came here at 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning this morning to start their day, and they haven't got home yet.
All right. Well, yeah, do
Yeah.
you have it?
Yeah, and this was idea was a workshop, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we got direction. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
I don't know what the direction is, but you got it.
Meeting's adjourned.
Wait till you sit down and listen to that.
I'm reading the
tape.
sign.